Noting the time, we'll get this meeting started. Welcome to the Westwood Planning Board meeting. My name is Trevor Lobenstein, and I'll be chairing this meeting. All meetings are recorded by Westwood Media Center. Is there anyone else in the audience who'd like to record this meeting? And if there is, could you please identify yourself? Seeing none, we'll move on. As a reminder, please turn off your cell phone ringers. The agenda is available at the back of the room. The meeting will follow the order on the agenda, and the meeting will be civil, and all people will be treated respectfully. The format of the meeting will be, when an item is called, the applicant will come forward to the podium to present their application to the board. The board will proceed to staff comments. The board members will ask questions of the applicant, and then the public will be given an opportunity to comment. When it's time for the public comment period, the chairman will call those wishing to speak to the podium. Once at the podium, please identify yourself by stating your name and address for the record. All comments and questions shall be directed through the chair. All people will be given the opportunity to speak, but in the interest of time and fairness, repetitive or off-topic comments may be cut short. First, are there any changes to the agenda?
There are no changes.
All right. So item number 1 is the Westwood Estates definitive subdivision on Hedgerow Lane, formerly known as 9 Hedgerow Lane and 443 Canton Street / White Lane. This is a request to release lots from covenant and accept tripartite agreement. Is there anyone here representative of the applicant? Okay.
Good evening. Excuse me, David Johnson from Norwood Engineering, here representing David Spiegel, the trustee of Canton Street Realty Trust, the developer of the property. We've been working with your consulting engineer, Phil Paratus from Beta Group, and Abby to get the bond list pared down to an amount that is workable. The site is well under the site is well under construction. They paved a week ago today. All the utilities are in. David has provided a check to Abby for the sidewalk fund, which was required as part of the waiving of the sidewalk as part of the approval of the plan. The emergency access is paved, and we're here to request the board to release the lots and execute the tripartite agreement with David and his bank.
Okay.
That's it.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thanks.
Commentary?
No other comments except for, so you had in your packet the draft version of the tri-party agreement, so town council and myself have reviewed it. And so it's been signed by the bank, so if you accept this, there's signatures, lines for you. The amount's been approved by Phil Paradis of Beta has given you the estimate, and then we did receive the funds, the 23,607 for the sidewalk fund.
Okay.
Great.
Okay.
So your motion should be to release the lots and accept the tri-party agreement.
So the base coating on the sidewalk on one side of the street, has that been done?
The road has been paved.
Yeah.
The,
So we now state we want that done at the same time as the base coat of the street?
I can address that, I think.
okay.
You'll have to check, but I believe under the old subdivision regulations, the sidewalk did not need to be paved at the time the base coat for the roadway. This subdivision was approved under the old regulations #1, and because of the country drainage LID swales, it's really not appropriate to put the sidewalk in until those swales are shaped and constructed.
Is that what the money set aside is for?
No, the sidewalk fund money came from the waiver of the sidewalk on one side of the street, but there's still a sidewalk that's going to be on the north side. That's right. And I forgot, this subdivision did come in early 2016, just a little bit before you updated your regulations, so it falls under the old regulations.
So the drainage right now flows off the road just onto the undisturbed land?
Yes.
can do this, but then we want to talk about there's a check, actually have a check for,
Yeah, and then you should probably maybe make a second motion to accept the funds, sidewalk funds.
that just check says Town of Westwood.
Yes, I believe it does, yep.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from the board?
No.
Any questions or comments from the public? Okay. Do I have a motion? Or one of two motions, I guess? First being to release the lots and accept the tripartite agreement.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second that.
All right. We have a motion and a second to release the lots and accept the tripartite agreement for Westwood Estates definitive subdivision. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. I think that's 5 ayes. And then do we have a motion to accept the sidewalk funds?
So I move that we accept the sidewalk fund of the amount of $23,607 to be given the town under the condition that it be set aside for use by,
I'd say into a separate account controlled by the planning board, I would think, to be,
I don't think we need to say separate
okay.
account, because then they get,
Don't we already have a separate account for the sidewalk project?
no, actually, you don't.
we will, as soon as we set this up, it will soon. I mean, this is our first,
So this motion will set it up.
yes,
Oh, well.
Yeah.
They did agree to set up a separate fund?
yes.
Okay. So,
So who controls the disbursements from the fund?
I think it should be the planning board, so I guess,
we'll make a motion for,
Looks like we need more, yeah.
hopefully you'll have some
Quite a motion.
force behind it.
we had, from this specific subdivision, there was, the applicant agreed to contribute the funds into a sidewalk fund to be established by the town of Westwood. The funds may be used for future sidewalk improvements or development of new sidewalks elsewhere in Westwood. That was the language that we had used for the approval of this subdivision.
It just says for use for sidewalks elsewhere.
Or development of new sidewalks elsewhere in Westwood.
Okay, new sidewalks elsewhere.
It's a sidewalk fund
Yeah,
that can be used anywhere throughout the town
right, for new sidewalks.
for new sidewalks or
Which
the,
includes-
or the improvement of
Yeah.
existing ones.
Yeah, which includes paths of any
Right.
kind. All right, so the motion is to accept the $23,607 into the newly created sidewalk fund, which would be under the control of the planning board to decide appropriately how to disperse and use those funds. Which
That's, I
which
think
would
we can
be
do, yeah.
which would be for new sidewalks in town.
Yep.
I think this is an opportunity to, I was thinking of, that we should establish a sidewalk fund to, not only for new sidewalks, but just improving safety at existing crossings. And I don't know if this is formal enough, like is this, and would the planning board control all the money in this fund, and would we, I want to approve this motion, but I'm just wondering if the selectmen as the road commissioners and all, like, how does that work?
Yeah, I think this one is really based out of your subdivision, because we created the sidewalk fund through your most recently adopted subdivision rules and regulations. So what will come into this fund will be from subdivisions that you approve in town. So I don't know if it would have the
Well, we want it for
expanded.
not, because the subdivision will have to have a new sidewalk anyway.
But would the
We're gonna need
subdivisions
it.
be the sole location for the money to come from? Or could we, I mean, are we creating this account to actually attract money from other sources?
Well, the source of the money will be from sidewalks like this.
Exclusively.
Yes, I think so. Now, I think I want to add to the motion that how we define a sidewalk, a new sidewalk to be any new sidewalk along a road on an appropriate path.
We've had some trouble with that.
Yeah, but we should, and also including conversion of asphalt sidewalk to a concrete sidewalk, and then as Dave said, to improve the safety at intersections and crossings.
I mean, I think there's a larger need for something that could be contributed not just from subdivisions, but you know, town meeting could allocate money to it. It could be a way to fast track the approval of safety improvements, in particular to existing situations that are unsafe. So I don't.
Is
again,
this something we have to approve tonight, the actual fund? Is it something we can sit down and talk about and come up with
Yeah.
Well, we want to approve, we want to say something tonight because we have the money tonight, and so we don't.
I just don't want to box ourselves
Yeah,
in.
can't we just say for the purpose?
Of this
Yeah.
money
We can
alone.
add- And we could add in other appropriate purpose,
I would add David's language also.
pedestrian-related purposes.
Yeah.
We add that to the motion?
I mean, I would suggest maybe not at this point, since the condition that was part of where we got these funds from the original subdivision didn't go to that scope. You know, it really was on sidewalks.
Well, a sidewalk, in other words, if you're improving, for instance, a crosswalk, that would, most of it would be
Exactly.
the two sidewalks on either side of the crosswalk.
Well, I think we can create the fund and then we can go to the road commissioners and have them,
Well, what we
figure
want
out-
to do is,
Yeah.
the
I mean, they're the
parameters
ones
of it.
that have to approve a given project, but we're the ones that provide the money to
Disperse.
that from this.
Right.
So we'd have to be happy with that project.
But Steve, you're right, at a crosswalk, it mostly includes the sidewalks on
Yeah.
either side. So I think we're fine the way it
Yeah,
is.
see, what I'm thinking is that $23,000 does not buy a lot of
It
sidewalk.
doesn't go far.
No.
But it could be enough to fund putting up a flashing beacon at a crosswalk. So I just want to make sure that's a possibility as well.
Right. So we just want to leave it, into the sidewalk fund and leave it at that?
I think we should leave it into the sidewalk fund as it is and then have the road commissioners, they can come up with the parameters of the fund. And just, it's something that we can all agree on.
As long as the motion says, to, the disbursement to be approved
By the planning board, yeah.
I'm fine with that.
All right.
I'll second that motion.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. 5 ayes.
Now, the tri-party agreement's going around for everyone to sign. And then we have Tom here to notarize that after.
Thanks.
On behalf of
Thank you.
Mr. Spiegel,
Okay,
thank you.
thank you.
Thanks for your work.
Just one place?
Yes.
So get that back. Only one. Thanks. All right. Item number 2, University Station, request for modification to parking layout for cart corrals and project-specific alternative signage for signage on the corrals. This is in reference to Home Goods, which is in Core Development Area 1, and Home Sense, which is in Core Development Area 2.
I
Yeah.
might interrupt just.
Oh, sorry, yes. I was,
This is all your free active deed.
yes, indeed.
Okay.
We're multitasking.
You can go on.
We're
Okay,
notarizing and moving on. I see we have someone from the applicant.
Next page.
Good evening. My name is Antoinette Sutton. Address is 281. My name is Antoinette Sutton. Address is 281 University Avenue, representing Home Sense, Home Goods, and TJX. We are requesting approval from the planning board for the placement of 2 cart corrals in our parking field. including the resulting reduction of parking spaces as well as the signage on the corrals. Each parking corral will take one parking space. With respect to the signage on these corrals, we are also requesting approval of same by the planning board in specific signage alternative pursuant to section 9710-515 of the zoning board.
Okay. Can you speak to maybe what's on the board? I guess, is this what was submitted, I guess, or?
What the specific signage would be?
It's just what to say on the carts, it'll just say Home Sense. So it's just the name
Okay,
of the store.
let's see. So this was Home Goods one.
That one is for
and
Home Goods,
then-
yes.
And this was a photo from the Framingham location, I
No,
believe.
that's
Is that right?
from the Westwood. Yeah, that is the framing.
Oh, okay.
Yes. That's the clip.
Yep. So we just have, so essentially, you're reviewing for both these, Home Sense and Home Goods, the request for the signage on the cart corrals and then the location of the cart corrals in the parking, since that was not part of the original conformance determination from back in 2013, I believe it was. Well, 2013, yep, for the whole core development area.
So
So you showed the existing ones, and you have a plan of the proposed.
Yep, the Home Goods ones are existing, and then the Home Sense photo is from the Framingham location, but it would be
Oh.
the same here.
Okay, but you don't have a plan with the exact location?
Oh, yes, the plan, yep,
The first one with the red rectangles.
yep. So this one is, I think this is
In front of
Home Sense. So the Home Sense entry is right here, and then it would be 2 parking spaces, is that what it
Yes.
is, 2 parking spaces? And then D. And then Home Goods also with the 2 parking spaces?
And we're saying those are existing and they've never been approved?
Yes.
They were never approved, so they're not covered under the 2013 agreement.
No, it just,
They just grew out of the ground
Yeah.
on their own, right?
Out of need.
Funny how that happens.
And the corrals that were part of the Wegmans, that are Wegmans' corrals, those were approved as part of the original development?
those were shown originally, and then they had come back to you, I
There's
think,
old
for the
debacle about
signage.
but That was
Yeah.
signage they wanted to rotate, right, or something?
Yeah, well, we wanted them to rotate,
Did we actually,
temporary.
did we actually approve the ones at Wegmans? Because we approved the signs on them, but did we actually?
I think the
approve,
locations were originally
They
shown
were shown?
earlier.
Oh, so these were just not shown on the
Yeah.
plan?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Are there any questions from the board of
No.
anyone?
Oh, you need 2 motions? You want a separate motion?
Yes, you should probably separate Home Goods and Home Sense.
Yeah. Oh, do we have any other questions from the public before we move on to the motion? Okay, thanks.
So I move that we accept the 2, corrals, they're called,
Yeah.
for, in front of Marshalls and Home Goods, that, we retroactive to the establishment, and, as shown on the plans here.
Okay, motion.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor of the home goods portion of our program, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Sorry, aye. 5.
4. Nay.
4. 1 nay.
My only thing is, it's nothing with the card corrals. It's the signage. I know that's very subtle signage, but it just means we set forth a signage package, and every couple of meetings, somebody comes up looking to modify it. And I don't see the sense of having a sign package approved that has to be modified every few weeks. I just don't see the point in that. That's my take. Thank you.
Sure. Okay.
So to be clear, when we approved the corral, we approved it with the sign
Okay,
on.
with the signs, okay.
Okay. So I move that we approve the 2 new corrals for Home Sense, including the signs on them, as shown on the plan.
I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
Nay.
All right, we have another vote, 4-1. I presume your comments are similar, Mr. McCusker?
Exactly.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Thank you.
All right, item number 3 is 401 Sandy Valley Road, an approval not required A&R plan. This is located at Assessor's Map 15, lots 14 and 27.
Hi, I'm Nick Pratt. I'm from Landvest. I was here at the last meeting, and I have here with me tonight Pat Arnow from Metro West Engineering, who is the surveyor who prepared the plan, and Denise Moynihan, who is the Jaeger's attorney. And so last week, I sent a letter with several supporting documents. We also submitted a revised plan. I assume the board has had a chance to review the letter, the documentation that was attached. So really, we're here to answer any questions. And
Maybe for the benefit of anyone in the audience who's here for this and for all of us, could you maybe speak to your letter? And
Sure.
Maybe actually introduce the project a little bit?
Yeah, sure. So the Jaegers own this property that you see here on the screen. The 2 smaller lots that you see there are 2 new A&R lots that they're seeking to create to do a conveyance to family members by year end. It's important to emphasize that there are no immediate plans to build. In fact, there are no definite plans to build. This is just for conveyance purposes. So we came in, it was a couple weeks ago, I believe it was November 7th, expecting to receive A&R endorsement. And I believe there were some issues or some questions about the status of Sandy Valley Road, which I don't think is fully resolved because no one has been able to find a town meeting vote that would officially establish the status of Sandy Valley Road. And I don't believe the town clerk in Westwood has the authority to certify the status of Sandy Valley Road because there's no official town map. However, it's definitely known that Sandy Valley Road has been in existence for a very, very long time, well before subdivision control law went into effect in March of, it was 1940, if I have the address, or the date correct. But in any event, there are 3 ways that an A&R endorsement can be made, and I think we've satisfied 2 of them without any question here. We have frontage on a way that is used by the public, maintained as a public road, regardless of what the technical status of it is. The property was also originally this larger property that you see was divided into 3 lots and endorsed in 2002. So this property that we're talking about already received A&R endorsement as recently as 2002. So it would satisfy an option for endorsing an A&R plan on that basis. And it's, as everyone well knows here, it's used as the access to Lowell Woods. So although it's not paved the full way, it's the road itself is at least as wide as the paved portion. It's suitable for many cars passing on a daily basis. It's plowed and graded by the DPW, and there is sewer in the road is there right now. It could service these 2 lots. So building here has always been imagined. Again, there are no definite plans to build. This is just being, this A&R endorsement is just being sought for conveyance to a family member.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Abby, do you have any commentary you'd
Yeah.
like to share beyond? Or
So since the last meeting, we looked in our files, and this portion of Sandy Valley where these new lots are being created is not public. We haven't been able to find like a formal street acceptance plan, but we've found in our records all that we could find is saying that Sandy Valley is only accepted 1,500 feet north of Gay Street, which brings us to the driveway, pretty much where 401, the driveway to 401 is. That's around where the paving goes to today. So we believe it's private in front of, or it's not accepted, it's not public in front of these 2 proposed new lots. So then the question becomes, to the planning board, your determination has to be, is it adequate construction, suitable grades, and sufficient width to access these proposed new lots? That's
Yeah, I
really
think
the
there are
question
a
before
few
you.
more things too that come into play. I think regardless of what the status of the road is, whether it's public or private, I don't think anybody can really answer that. Maybe there is, it would take an enormous amount of research, and maybe if you did that research, you wouldn't even.
Well, who owns the land? I mean, isn't it a simple question of who owns the road? If it's private, then it must be one of the abutters here owns it.
I guess what I was going to say is that regardless of whether it's, I don't think it's relevant whether it's public or private. I think what case law has established is that what's relevant is it used and maintained as a public way? And the answer to that question is clearly yes. And the
Well,
public uses it
it's
every day
not
and it's
yes,
maintained.
because there's a reason the pavement stops. I understand it is sometimes plowed convenience-wise by the town, sometimes graded convenience-wise by the town. There's a reason the pavement stops, and it's clear in our records that 1,500 feet north of Gay Street down Sandy Valley Road is where our public way ends.
Okay, but regardless, it's still used and maintained as a public way, which is just one option for endorsing an A&R plan. So then even if you don't like that option, then the second is a way, this is where it has frontage, a way shown on a plan theretofore approved and endorsed in accordance with subdivision control law. This planning board endorsed an A&R plan on this property in 2002. Unanimous vote.
You did also receive in your packet a letter from the Public Works Director saying that the town occasionally maintains the area. And, however, that's not in the same way that they would handle other public roads in town. It was due to access to the Lowell Woods Conservation Area. That's why they do that. But it's at a lower priority than the other public roads in town.
So I think, I mean, the question is if it's suitable for a number of people going up and down every day, is it suitable for one additional lot?
Well, it might be suitable conveyance of vehicles going to park at the Lowell Woods entrance. That's one thing. Construction vehicles and the such, it's a different story.
And the combination of actual residents and
Exactly.
and general public using Lowell Woods on a private way seems to be questioning the adequacy of the roadway. I mean, the road is narrow, it's dirt, it's not built to the standards of a subdivision road or otherwise, and unpaved. And to argue simply by the fact that it's used as a road makes it a road, I don't really follow, I guess. And I don't, we're not, I understand we previously approved a portion of this road as an A&R plan, but I don't think there's any reason we're forced to continue the precedent, whether it's here or anywhere else.
There is a case, the
There is
town
a
of
case law.
Burlington.
Yeah,
And I did
Burlington.
read that, and while I'm not an attorney, it seemed pretty clear that, I mean, this was very, very similar, almost exactly what we have here, where we approved it before, thinking this was a public way, and in fact it was not. And so then we not only can correct it, but we should correct that in the future on any of these things, that in fact the one error was made and it need not be repeated. And then another point out, there are three things here, and it's the first one, and I don't see that it fits any of them. The first one is a public way or a way where the clerk of the town certifies, and you just
Yeah, but
said
I think
that
what case
the
law
clerk
has
is
shown is that,
unable to do that.
regardless of whether it's public or private, or whether it's murky, it's a question of whether it's used and maintained as a public way. And I think in this case, clearly it's used and maintained as a public way.
I disagree. I think
I
it's
disagree as
used as
well,
the
yeah.
extension of the parking lot.
Yeah, it's a courtesy more than anything else to the
So-
people
so
who
right
use
on your-
Little Woods.
Way to the parking lot. It's not the parking lot, it's the access to.
And we're under no legality to maintain that portion of the road to the parking lot. We just do that as a courtesy.
Well, and I guess we might, what if there were an accident that happened, and here's a public land, right? I mean, the town owns that part of Lowell Woods. We encourage people to use it as a recreation, and many cars travel across this path. Not clear whether it's who owns it. It would be very disturbing if it was privately owned and someone could exclude the public from accessing Lowell Woods. But, I mean, I don't know how you can say it's not a public access way. I mean, it's.
Oh, it doesn't have to be a public way in order for people to be able to use it. If it's a right-of-way, then someone can use it to get to the other end of
If
it.
it's only for access to Lowell Woods, that, I guess you're saying like it's a public, like a public easement or something, or?
If it's a right-of-way, and then it leads to Lower Woods, so anyone going to Lower Woods has the right to drive down there. I don't think that makes it a, I mean, it's still a private way.
Right, it doesn't have to be a publicly maintained way for that to happen.
Yeah.
It can be a private way and that still happen.
So I'm looking at this, and it says has to be a public way, and this is marked private way on the plan. It's, and it certainly wasn't a way that wasn't created by the subdivision control law. And the third one is, the suitable width, suitable grades, and adequate construction to provide for the needs of vehicular traffic and.
Right, and that doesn't just mean a Subaru, that means fire trucks and ambulances and police.
I mean, this has to be the least well-built road in the whole town.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you might be gleaning that we're not convinced, I mean, by these arguments. I mean, we have case law backing up portions of it, and, I mean, and as Steve mentioned, we have several, points on which to discuss, which we can go around in circles about whether or not we think it's a road, not a road. But clearly, the road does not have sufficient width, grade, or adequate construction for two-way traffic, being only 14 feet wide, rutted, dirt, et cetera. So I guess I don't know how we're supposed to swallow that fundamental physical aspect of this roadway. And I understand what you're saying is this is not for an eminent construction of property, but something tells you if it was, we'd be looking at a plan where there's a new road being built. So, I mean, what would you like us to do? What else would you like to share with us?
I think I've shared everything I can. I guess I'm perplexed though that it's used on a daily basis by many cars and could be accessed by emergency vehicles and construction vehicles and used and maintained by the town. There's a sewer line there that it seems a incredibly undue hardship to make a private landowner pay to pave the road, just to create one more lot.
Mhm. Okay.
This is one house. I mean, we're not talking about 20-plus houses, right? One house that may be built in the future. And when and if they do build, of course, they have to go for a building permit. And ultimately, it's going to be up to the building inspector to decide whether it has to be paved or not. If it does at that point and they still want to build, they won't have any choice. We're only seeking an A&R endorsement. We're not asking whether this is buildable or not. There's no plans to build.
Mm-hmm.
We just want to create a lot.
Okay. Any other questions or
Well,
comments?
I think what the planning board is doing is, if it says it doesn't think this is an approval not required, that means they should pursue a subdivision in order to
What
create
we're trying to
those
say
lots.
is that this
Yeah.
isn't a subdivision. That's it. We're not asking whether it's buildable. If it has to be paved, then I think that's an issue for the building inspector, and the current owners or future owners will deal with it at that time. We're simply looking to get an endorsement saying that this creation of one additional lot does not constitute a subdivision. That's it. It's that simple.
Okay.
But again,
Just
give-
kind of, maybe we're mixing, building permit issues with just
well,
straight zoning issues.
given that we recognize that we shouldn't have endorsed it previously, it was really, and we can recognize the fact that that was a mistake to create the 2 lots. We're really creating 3 lots here now by doing this.
That's a good point.
Mm-hmm.
Well, the previous plan created 3 lots. One of those lots was ultimately conveyed to the town.
How,
So now we're left with 2. So originally, you had, this was just, imagine that as one lot.
Right.
Yeah.
The 2002 A&R plan created this lot, and this lot.
got it.
This shortly thereafter was conveyed to the town of Westwood.
Got it.
It is?
And I understand, and we can't be.
Oh.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't on the board then, and I would say I probably would not approve that plan with what I know now. And just because we made a plan in 2002 that was approved by another board, we can't go down the same road just because of that. We can't be setting bad precedents after bad precedents.
So why was that land conveyed to the town of Westwood?
It's I believe it was a conservation sale. I believe it was the Honeywells.
What's on the other side of the road? It's more town of Westwood.
Well, yes.
But we still don't know who owns the road.
On that A&R plan, it showed as a public way. I have there included in my letter all the
Yeah.
the original application, the minutes from that meeting.
But we feel that that was a mistake that was made, that it was listed as a public way when in fact it is a private way, and you've corrected that.
We corrected that based on what the best that the town clerk can give us. The best that the town clerk can give us is based on some research that I believe the previous town engineer did a few years ago. I don't know what the supporting documentation was from that research. I don't know if that exists, but we do know that, nobody's been able to find a town meeting vote accepting the road.
Mm-hmm.
And since there isn't an official town map in Westwood today, I don't believe that the town clerk has authority to certify the road. So, it seems, I'm not a lawyer, but it seems to me the status of the road is unclear. It's just never been dealt with.
To you, it's unclear. To us, there's no evidence saying it's a public road. There is more evidence saying that it's a private road, as far as the town is concerned. Okay? I'm not here to judge whether it's right or wrong or otherwise. I'm just saying the evidence stands on the side of it being a private way from 401 Sandy Valley Lane on.
Well,
Okay, but
I would
still
just,
think, regardless of that, it's still used, again, I know I'm repeating myself, it's still used.
And I understand what you're saying, sir.
well, and I would just, the other arguments, I'm not persuaded by any of the other arguments. I mean, I agree, if we made a mistake in the past, we're not bound by that today. You shouldn't repeat the same mistakes of the past. I'm not convinced really either way on this, because it comes back to, if there was an acceptance by the town, well, then who would the town be accepting the roadway from? There was this road there in the past before 128 that went through to Dedham and all that. So I guess I will end up concurring with everybody else here and not saying we should do this. But I think it's, I just wonder, is there any, I don't think it's that. I think it's a big question to find out what is the status of that road? Why is it now a private way when it's the only way to access Lowell Woods? Like, does that mean that it's trespassing if you go there, or does it?
Who knows, but we have to go by evidence.
So
And
not
the only
knowing-
evidence we have,
Well, the evidence we have is that the road is 20 to 25 feet wide. It's not 14 feet wide. I went out there and measured it before this meeting. It's in terrible condition, but, that could be because the town, believes that it is a private way. So it's all kind of, it is either something that should be maintained by the town, or maybe it is something that's not.
or the fact
So
that we
because of that
cannot
confusion-
find an acceptance at town meeting of this street, we would have to assume it was never accepted as a street.
Or that it was always a street.
Well, I don't see that as clear.
Doesn't seem that clear.
So I think in the confusion there, I have to agree with this, I have to concur with the rest of this board and say, you
Reginald?
haven't convinced me that we have to approve this as an A&R, so I will not support the A&R.
Yeah, just, for me, the road, it's not safe in the current condition. The width, the grades.
Sorry.
Oh, I'm done. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
Yeah, I just think that the current condition of the road isn't, it's not there for me.
Okay. Do you have commentary? Sure.
Denise Moynihan at the Moynihan Law Office. Just one thing I want to add, because you're going back to the notion that this portion of the road may still in fact be private, which it may very well be. But if that is the case, then the law says that the abutters on either side of the road maintain the fee in the road, which means they own it, which means that access to the public portion beyond it could in fact be restricted. So it's something that I think this board wants to keep in mind. Perhaps since we're going down this road, we might want to get a little bit of input from town council, and we can provide you with a little bit more information if you're going to go down the road. This portion, which in and of itself is a little odd, you have to admit, that the road is public all the way up to this portion, and then there's this small portion that leads up to this other public event that is considered private. That's in and of itself strange. So perhaps if we could table this before we get a vote, and we can provide you with some more information.
Yeah, what if it were clear that it is a public way?
I mean,
If it was, if this was all cleaned up and there was a town vote to accept Sandy Valley Road to Lowell Woods.
I think that was
Would that be suitable for A&R endorsement regardless of just the condition of the road?
That would get us past one
I think
hurdle.
that would be helpful. I think that would help. Yeah.
I
But
think,
you don't have to pass one hurdle.
Yeah, that is correct.
Right? You
It's a
only
three-pronged
pass
test.
one test.
Mm-hmm.
I agree,
Yep.
but we're not there. And for it to be accepted at town meeting, the condition has to go way up. A lot of improvements to the road for that to happen.
so I think since if you don't have proof that it's public, then your focus is on the adequacy of the current state of the road. So the construction, the sufficient width, and the grades. That's where your focus should be.
Yep.
And I recommend you vote tonight, since this is an A&R application. Time is limited. You determined it was incomplete last time, but you do have to act within, I think now the applicant submitted information last week, so you have 21 days to act. So that, you don't have time to push this off anymore. You need to make a motion tonight.
So one last thing. So the second option, a way shown on a plan theretofore approved and endorsed in accordance with subdivision control law. What you're saying is that the A&R plan that was endorsed in 2002 doesn't count, or?
No, it isn't, because that's not a subdivision plan. An A&R plan is essentially saying a subdivision plan is not required. So only if it was a
It's
definitive
way shown
subdivision
and
plan.
therefore approved, I guess that word.
We didn't-
And endorsed, so, again, I'm not an attorney, I don't.
Right,
It's
yeah,
not a
so an A&R means we didn't approve the plan, we just said it doesn't need subdivision approval. So that's not a real approval of the plan, is.
So I've prepared a draft motion.
So I just, I mean, I don't, you suggesting that you go to town meeting and try to get this accepted as a public way?
No,
How
no,
about-
I believe there's sufficient facts on the ground to prove that it is in fact a public way. The fact that it is used and maintained in that fashion does, and I just think that we can probably provide you with more information.
All right, but if we,
You should act now, and you could refile an
yeah, they can
application.
always refile, there's no limit on refiling these things? Correct?
Right,
But we have,
Yeah, we.
we have 20, well,
1 day.
we have few days left to approve
Yeah.
or it gets
Yeah.
accepted automatically.
Yeah, I think we clearly have to reject it now so that we don't lose any rights to, on it.
Okay. Are there any other comments from the public? Speak now.
Could you? use
Mr.
the
Aaron,
mic?
could you
Maybe if
stand
you
up
could
and
stand
take
up and use
this
the mic.
microphone, please?
Tom Aaron, 37 Pheasant Hill Street, Westwood. It seems to me as though if you're allowing and encouraging the public to use Sandy Valley Road to access Lowell Woods, why wouldn't you approve this lot? This is a single homeowner.
Well, yeah, we're not, we're certainly not doing this because we want to be nasty to the homeowner or the landowners or anything like that. We have to follow the rules, and
Right.
the rules, when it gets to this, they're laid out very precisely, and so we have to go by what is written in the rules, and it's really, we just can't sit and say, okay, we like this, so let's do it.
Yeah.
So is your concern a safety issue?
No, it's a concern, it doesn't meet the requirements that say, that we can say this is an approval not required plan.
I think what you're saying, you're saying that it's not public. So it doesn't pass number one, it doesn't pass number two. Where you have some ability to interpret is number three, where you determine whether it has adequate width, grade, and construction for the intended purpose. And I think what you're saying, despite the fact, which I don't understand, despite the
Yeah.
fact that the public uses Sandy Valley Road all day long, every day, that it's not suitable for a single additional building lot. That's what I think you're saying. Am I correct?
Yes, they're saying, if they do not approve this, they're saying it does not meet the requirements
Right.
of this administrative
yeah.
act, and thus needs a filing of a definitive subdivision application.
Okay, may I just read something into the record? This is from Westwood, the town website. This is a document created by the Westwood Land Trust. And it says in this document, in 1998, the 71-acre Lowell parcels were added to the Conservation Commission land inventory. In 2000, the purchase of the Sandy Valley Trust parcels. 70 acres were placed under the control and custody of the Conservation Commission. Through a donation of the town, an additional 22 acres in Clabbertree Meadow were placed under the conservation protection in 2001. So it seems to me, from reading this, all that land leading up to the Lower Woods is in the control of the Conservation Commission. Also says, since the late 70s, very little land had been placed under the management of the Conservation Commission. By carefully planning, the town, through the Selectmen, Conservation Commission, and through the hard work of the dedication of many people, many town residents who have volunteered their time and expertise, as well as the dedicated employees of the town, many special parcels have been donated, purchased, and permanently protected from development. Again, I don't know what that means exactly, but
Well, if
that's
you
another
define
twist
it,
to the whole
it's
thing.
just like Denise was saying, it would be, the Jaegers would own at least to the center line, and the
Oh.
road on their side, and then it would be the Conservation Commission.
I can't say that.
I'm not certain about the east side.
Okay. Well, just so we're clear, this board doesn't have enough information to approve your A&R, so we have to deny it. You can refile, you can do more research. It's not the end of the road, but this A&R that was filed last week, we have to deny it now.
So I just have one further comment. So if you're going to deny this, you should not allow anybody to access Low Woods. You should not allow anybody to drive beyond this point.
We don't make those
No,
determinations.
even if this is a private way, one of the abutters is the town of Westwood, and therefore the town of Westwood has a right to have anyone access their property along the entire length of the road.
Okay.
All right, a motion.
Any other commentary from anyone? Okay. All right. There was a draft motion before us. Would anyone like to move upon it?
So you have a,
Page 3.
oh, it's not, okay, moving back, okay.
So are we-
I forgot.
Oh, we want to move to deny the request for an A&R for Stanley Valley Road, map 15, lots 14 and 27, and for the following reasons. The lots do not front on a public way, a way that is maintained and used as a public way, as specified in Chapter 41, Section 81, Mass General Laws. 2, the plan submitted with this application is not shown in a way approved in accordance with the subdivision control law. And 3, this portion of Sandy Valley Road does not have sufficient width, suitable grades, or adequate construction to provide safe and convenient travel or vehicular traffic to each of the proposed lots. And so therefore, adequate access to proposed lots 16 and 17 is specified and contemplated in Chapter 41, Section 81M, Mass General Laws, does not exist on this portion of Sandy Valley Road at the time of this application. And so since meaningful access, adequate access to each lot does not exist, the plan constitutes a subdivision requiring approval under the subdivision control law.
Okay. I have a motion. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All right. All those in favor? Or, I'm sorry, any further comment? No. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Any abstentions?
I'll abstain.
Okay. We have 4 ayes and 1 abstention.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. Item 4 is 565 Gay Street, a pre-application meeting.
Oh, yeah, we can.
Sorry, pre-application meeting. This is an informal discussion to review concept plans to subdivide a lot to create 2 single-family lots.
I will recuse myself as a butter.
Okay.
So, for the record, my name is John Glossa, Glossa Engineering, 46 East Street in East Walpole, and Tom Garrity is here with me, who is the owner of the property. We met with you 2 weeks ago, and, was it 2 weeks ago? And provided some options for subdividing the lot. You essentially, I think, what I heard in the end was sort of 2 things. One was, let's see what a proof, well, maybe there were 3 things. Let's see what a proof plan might look like. And actually, that ends up being sketch number 2. I had sketch number 1, I can't tell you, but it's sketch number 2. So if you go to number 2, this is what, as close as we can get to a conventional plan would look like. It would still need some waivers simply because of the geometry of the site. So some of the waivers that it would need is if in fact Gay Farm Way is a quote-unquote public street, then, and because Gay Street is arterial way, between the Subdivision Road and Gay Farm Way would need to be 600 feet. So in sketch number 2, it's 345 feet. And that's measured from where the radius meets the roadway to the side of Gay Farm Way. The offset distance to the abutting property, your requirement is 40 feet. And again, where the rounding touches the roadway, it's 3 feet. Oh, it's actually 0 feet, I'm sorry. Where the, let's see, the minimum rounding of the roadway itself is 40 feet, and so we're showing it 10 feet. So those other waivers would become even less if we showed it at 40 feet. And then, let's see, I think the rest of the items, there would be no waiver required. So in my review of your regulations, those would be the 3 waivers that would be required. I would imagine when we got to the definitive stage, we might ferret out 1 or 2 others, but I think those would be the major waivers that would be required for a quote-unquote conforming plan. If we go back to sketch number 1, so you saw a version of this before, and so the only difference really here is that on the prior submission, we had shown the driveway from this Lot 2, which is abutting Gay Street, going right out to Gay Street, and there was objection to that, and we don't really have a problem with that sort of connecting to kind of a common driveway right in this location here. Again, this plan is showing a connection from Gay Street to Gay Farm Way. We're not saying that that's sort of a requirement to make this happen. But as you may recall, when we were here maybe a year or so ago, at least one of the abutters and your consultant from Beta sort of expressed their concern about the site distance at Gay Farm Way and Gay Street, especially when you're looking to the left as you're exiting this property, and also as you're heading in that direction towards Westwood Center as you're taking a left. Because this is sort of coming over kind of a sharp hill, and the crest of the hill being right in here. So when you're actually coming out of that Gay Farm Way, when you're looking to your left, I'd say you have about 100 feet of sight distance, and as you know, the cars can travel fairly quickly on Gay Street. So if there is interest in this, then we would contact these neighbors here and find out if there is actually interest in that from them, and we would construct the roadway to connect to Gay Farm Way. That was number 2, and then number 3. Number 3 was actually drawn at your request. We had shown something similar to this, except we had the roadway kind of doing like this and sort of circumvent or surrounding the the abutting property here, and our lots to the rear. So I think you just kind of asked me, what would it look like if we had the roadway here sort of come through, have 80,000 square foot lot here, and another 80,000 plus square foot lot here. So it would look like that. It would create the same, or allow for the same relief for the people on Gay Farm Way, and it would create those 2 lots. Would create a little challenge for me because I think there's a lot of ledge back here, and there's no sewer here. So we're dealing with septic systems, and right now our tests that passed are in this location and in this location. But we can, if this is something that sort of you're interested in, we can explore that and see if there is some way we can get septic systems for this lot here. And then I'm going to show you a 4th one that you didn't have. Take all of the sharp instruments and please put them under the table while I show you this one. So Tom asked me.
It's an informal meeting. There are no sharp instruments.
Yeah, okay. Tom asked me the other day if there was actually a possibility of 3 lots, and there is, but I mean with some, tremendous waivers. The reason he's asking that is that if this was sort of quote-unquote approved, all of this could stay as it is, be refurbished without being moved or anything like that. And then you would have, so you have this sort of roadway that again sort of encompasses the abutting lot here. But, if you kind of delved into this like I did, really what it is there's 196,000 square feet of upland land on the property. So you have to have 60,000 for each lot upland. So 196 minus 60 minus 60 minus 60 leaves you with 16,000 square feet. So essentially we take the 16,000 and divide it by 20 and get a road length, and you can see all of these have 60,000 and a little bit more. That's the only way you can do it. I mean, the only other way, if you were going to throw your pens and sharp instruments at me here, the only other way to do it is to come along this edge and then run the road into the wetlands and say, well, here's our road, which would be crazy. So you may not like this, you may like it, I don't know. Tom likes it because it allows him to get 2 new lots and do a rehab on the home without having to move it. So on the other, actually on our other preferable sketch is number 1. And in this case, what we would do is find a home for the house. And maybe even talk to the Affordable Trust people here to see if there's some way to move it there and how it can be used. I know in Norwood, I didn't do the job, but they developed some land off of Dean Street, right? Dean Street's that main street that runs down from the Ponset Street to Route 1. And a fellow named Paul Easy, who develops land in Norwood, actually took that house, and Norwood allowed him to just put it on a lot that he owned off of 1A, actually where his house is, off of 1A, and it's just sort of a, I don't know, access sort of a quasi-public museum. It's on private property, but so Tom expressed his desire to preserve it. It's just that to preserve it where it sits is a little bit uneconomic in his estimation. So, you know, that's where we're at. I guess I can answer any questions. Hopefully I answered your questions that you had at the last meeting. You can bring the sharp instruments back up onto the top of the
Well,
table.
if you go back to that one, you have,
The one with the 3 lots?
yeah, the 3 lots.
Put them back under the table, please.
I mean, if everything is cut so close there, you still have those 90-degree turns in the road. Do you have room to get the curves in there?
Well, we'd be able to get the curves in there. I mean, you know, I'm sure the fire department's going to tell us that they're too tight or whatever. There is a little bit of wiggle room here, not a lot. We might have 500 or 600 square feet of wiggle room where we might be able to take the curse off of this a little bit. But if it is something that you're interested in, we could pursue it with some of the town officials.
You have flexibility in where the road ends and the driveway begins. But again, see, that roadway requires waivers right there. Not only does it do the sharp 90-degree turns, there's no cul-de-sac at the end of it.
No, there's no cul-de-sac. Once you put the cul-de-sac in, you've lost your
Yeah.
ability to maintain the 60,000 square feet.
But this requires, you said, what waivers does this require? And I'm saying it
Pretty much
requires
every waiver
every
that's
waiver,
in the
okay.
book.
So that, the cul-de-sac is just one of them,
Yeah, and then the
south
other
corners
thing
of
is,
the
and
other.
you know, Tom's gonna, he's take the sharp instruments away from him is, and this is the worst place to come out on his lot.
Yeah.
Because this doesn't really afford you much sight distance either way. I looked at all of the sight distance along his frontage, went every 10 feet and looked left and right, and believe me, this provides the maximum sight distance in the most safe scenario, is to have it up here, which is why I keep going back to that sketch 1. You know, or if you want to do sketch 2, which essentially is the one that has just the 3 waivers, we can do this. You know, Tom's willing to do the sketch 2, but the sketch 2, because we're only getting the 3 waivers, we'd be looking at not keeping the existing house. I mean, I think if there was someone nearby who wanted it and we could move it, that would be one thing. But I would just say for sketch 1, we'd be willing to sort of take that on
rid
Right.
of it. Couldn't get rid of his old house. I don't know if they're gonna make rid of theirs, but.
So,
So sketch one would include, 2 new houses and moving the existing house to some reasonable nearby location.
so how many waivers on sketch one?
On sketch one. So sketch one, so you always have the waiver.
Cheat sheet here, okay.
Yeah, you always have the waiver.
So what are those, the distance between the two entry points off of Gay? What is the distance between, because that would be is that essentially a new street that the houses come onto?
Here,
So what is the distance between there and Sandy Valley? I mean, not Sandy Valley.
Gay Farm,
Gay Farm.
it's 345 feet. But the 345 feet is actually measured from here to here.
Don't we
No,
need
it's actually
500
to
in the
here.
bylaws?
It's 600.
600.
My reading of it, it's 600 because of the status of Gay Street. As I forget what it says in the regulations, but engineer would call it an arterial. It's an arterial street. But, we're
That's a tough
we're
one.
doing two things, though, that one of them doesn't probably make that much difference, but we've actually pushed the pavement away as far as we think we can reasonably get it away from, so it's not concentric with the layout. And the other thing is, by creating a connection here, the Gay Farm thing really, it's almost like people who want to drive safely would almost avoid coming out here, because it really is that sort of, when you come out, and you got to step on the gas to make sure you're going fast enough before someone comes over that hill. So by doing that, it's kind of offsetting the 600-foot requirement between the streets. I don't think we have any rights to sort of tell these people not to go out there or not to drive in there, but we can leave them an option to use the more safe entrance and exit.
But if they have another exit, they could, the question is, what is the current status of Gay Farm
It's a
way?
public
Yeah.
street.
It's a public, which is,
No, it's not a public street. It's private in ownership, and it's private in maintenance. The town does not maintain it, right? They don't pick up trash on it, they don't plow it, they don't do anything. And in fact, if you read the deeds of some of these lots, the deeds bind them into an agreement to maintain it, to share the maintenance of it. So it's private in that sense. It's only, like the guy before us, the only thing we hung our hat on saying it was public is that the board in the past, on a couple of occasions, actually signed an A&R plan. But I understand what you're saying. Just because you make a mistake doesn't bind you to make another mistake. And you have to forgive me for giving you that plan, but I have to work for my client, so I'm going to, try everything that I can for my client. So we tried, it didn't work.
so normally we say, is there some waiver fee plan that you can do, even though you may not want to do it, and then we can,
Well,
given that you don't need waivers, we can give you
yeah,
something with
that's-
waivers.
Sketch 2 is as close as can be had to a waiverless plan. There really isn't any way to do a waiverless plan, because you require this 600 feet between, the only way we would be able to do it is, we all go to court and sit there in front of a judge, and the judge would say, nope, Westwood Planning Board, that's not a public street. Because what we would argue is, if this is a public street, then every driveway serving Roach Brothers and Wegmans and Home Goods is a public street, because that's really what you're saying to us, but I'm not gonna get in that argument now. What we're saying is, you know, you give us those 3 waivers, distance to the abutter, the roundings, and this distance here, and those are our 3 waivers, and we would be willing to do the rest of it.
Right.
22-foot wide street, whatever your cul-de-sac is, et cetera, et cetera. Sidewalks on both sides, trees every 30 feet, all of those things.
But the second waiver, you need the offset distance to a lot line outside of the subdivision.
Right.
That's the 40 foot.
Right,
That's,
right, that's right.
that's a significant waiver. That's something we've always had. At one time, it was in the wrong place. It was in our zoning bylaw, and then it was ruled that it should really be in the subdivision. So we moved it
Right.
from one to the
So
other.
again, you know, you would have that, we go in
Yeah.
front of this judge and we say, Judge, everybody's house is within 40 feet of a street, because everybody has frontage on a street. So, you know, you got some guy here and he goes, oh, I'm within 40 feet of a street. You got a street right in front of you. You
Well,
know,
but
you
the
touch a
difference between the
street,
front of
so-
the house and the side of the house. The
Well,
purpose,
A lot of people live on a corner lot and they love it, right?
But
So, I
the-
mean, it's kind of a matter of.
but they set their house back from both streets. Here, it's someone next door has their house, and they weren't expecting a road to be built right across, you know, on the other side of their property line, and that's what the 40-foot is supposed to protect.
Yeah.
And I know in the past when we had that, that was an important concern, and we wouldn't grant anything closer to that unless they can, I'm not sure we ever did, but if we did, they had to first show that they could do it without being within 40 feet, and then I think we might have at one point allowed less of a distance than the 40 feet, but certainly not the 0, or near the 0, yeah, the 0 that you have here.
Well, I think you have, because I did the plan, but again,
You,
I
you,
don't
you
want-
have one where we did it in the past?
yeah, 600 Clapboard Tree Street.
So I think
But I mean, you know,
that's
it's sort of the same argument, just because you did something in the past doesn't bind you to do something now. But I can make your arguments for you too, but, you know, it's all a matter of reasonableness, right? You know, you sort of take a piece of property and you kind of, by adding these dimensional requirements, you kind of make it unbuildable.
But didn't the 600-foot, 600 Clapper Tree Street, that came in that little area of time between, it was judged that we couldn't do that in,
That could be.
and then we hadn't yet put it in our subdivision rules and regulations, so
Could
you
be, yeah.
got
Yes,
away
it
with
did.
that by doing that.
right. So it wasn't in the subdivision regulations
Yeah.
specifically at that time.
So you just fortunately had a
So
little
we-
break there
Missed the
on
window.
that one. I
So-
don't think you can use it as a precedent for that reason.
So you purposely updated your regulations in 2016 and made that in there. So traditionally, the planning board's practice has been to only grant waivers only after you've received a proof plan showing that the waivers aren't needed. Because you have the authority to grant waivers if you find that it's in the public's interest and not inconsistent with the subdivision rules and regulations. So the applicant has now come back with this option 2, with the attempt for the proof plan, but it's not waiver-free. There's still 3 waivers, or 2 definitely.
So if we didn't,
Significant ones.
yeah, if we
One
didn't have the
significant
offset
one.
distance to Gay Farm Way, and you could show us that you could have a waiver-free where it's moved back 40 feet, then the planning board could say, okay, we can grant you this subdivision, but then waive the 40 feet and allow you to build it closer to the neighbor, because that would be, as long as, you know, it was a reasonable distance, didn't impact the neighbor, number one, and number two, it's getting to a safer point on the road. So that's the kind of thing we could do if that was the only waiver.
No, I understand that, but as I said, and I'm not gonna tell you, I'm not gonna draw a plan and show that 40 feet away and then another 25 feet, is it 50, do you know what I mean? So now I'm 65 feet from this lot line, where you're getting to the point where you know, because there's some dimensional requirements on the books, we're gonna put somebody at risk coming in and out of this site because that's not the best place to have the site distance. I mean, you know, if you want me to explore that, I can, but I'm pretty sure that, you know, once you move away from this corner, the site distance gets less and less and less as you're looking to the right as you're coming out of the street here, because it's going up and down over a hill. But to tell you the truth, I never really bothered to measure it. I kind of did it by common sense. Like, why would I try to drive out over there when I can drive out here and see, you know, a long distance in both directions? If you want to pursue that, we can. I think it's a 30 or 35 mile an hour street, so we really don't have to see that far, but we'd probably behoove ourselves to do a speed analysis, because I think the cars are going faster than what the speed limit says, you know, the 80%.
But then once you move that street away from that zero distance, what other waivers then get added to that new plan that you're creating to get away from that waiver?
Well, certainly we get closer to Gay Farm Way.
Exacerbates that one, but
Exacerbates
having close on that one.
Yeah, because right
And
now
it
that
may
looks
be
like
a-
a pretty solid burden to the abutter to have that street. But-
Well, I think that would be a burden to the abutter, but I'm not sure that this is a burden to the abutter, so. Right, and this is not a burden, in my estimation, to the abutter. And, you know, this can be moved a little bit, you know, if we need to move this 10 feet or something, that's not a project killer. And this has its advantages we would pursue it and certainly report back to you before we went any farther. But I think it provides a pretty significant relief to these people who live back here, who now are sort of forced to come through here. And actually, I'm not really sure of the configuration in here, but it may even be able to somehow provide some access to this lot too, and they may find that there's an advantage to that, so.
And what's the distance there between that, when it comes down towards Gay Farm Way, to the abutter, to the left of the abutter's property on the corner? Because now you're creating an island for that house again, where you're surrounding it. So you have the new street coming through, or is that a?
So it's just a driveway. It's, let's see, it's an 18-foot wide street that comes through here. So do you want to know the actual pavement to the abutter?
No, so the distance between that driveway to the abutter towards the bottom.
To here?
No, to the left. Keep going left.
I'm not sure.
You're going
To-
up. I'll point to it.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, what is this distance? See, now you're creating an island for this house here. What is that?
Oh. Well, can you get a scale and I'll tell you.
Isn't that already an island to itself?
No, I'm just wondering the distance.
Surrounded by pavement.
Right. That's 40 feet.
It's 40 scale. So that distance is 20 feet. So 20 feet to the edge of that access way. And so that's a 25-foot access way with an 18-foot driveway placed within it from here to here.
Yeah, I mean, it's a challenging lot to subdivide like this.
Well, I think that gets to something, I mean, sort of, we've been really focused on the details here of this engineering, and I gotta say, you've really been quite creative and obviously put in a lot of effort, and as a designer, also, I wanna thank your client for being willing to presumably compensate your engineer for chasing these different leads.
Like I said, it's been 4 years.
Right.
You know, everybody that the town suggested I hire to look at these, like consultants and otherwise.
Right.
I've obliged you, you know? I'd just like to go on the record and say that the gentleman who owns the roadway that runs with his deed, so he is the owner. I've had several discussions with him, and he has verbally said to me that he would go along with that. So, just for the record, that drawing is, in my mind, halfway there. The hardest part, the gentleman who owns the back part of the road has said, he'd be willing to further develop the plan. The other thing is, and I don't know if the board understands this, I am right across Gay Farm Way, where I built my home 24 years ago, and, live there still. I had 5 kids. They're mostly gone. I don't know how much longer I'm going to be there, but it affects me too. And I don't live in another town or anywhere else. So when you talk about abutters, even though there's a way or a street or whatever it is, I live right there. I look over at this. And, I build, I think, what is a very quality thing. It's not, my name is on it, and I come from a long line of that agricultural and building tradition. So just so it's on the record, the street, and that I'm right across the way. Thank you.
So I guess where I was going to go, thank you for that, but I guess where I was going to go with my comment is that, the single residential E zone, isn't designed for subdivision really. I mean, you look at all these lots, there's scores of these types of lots in our town, and they're difficult for many reasons, but they're not really meant to be subdivided, and that's part of the reason why it's so difficult to subdivide it. And aside from setting the precedent of certain waivers, setting a precedent of people trying to divide these types of lots, I think is equally dangerous for us to contemplate. I mean,
We'll have people lining up down the street trying to subdivide their property.
yeah, I mean, I could contemplate a plan like this in my own house, and it just doesn't seem like the right precedent to set for the furthering of development on our land. I mean, I don't know how else to put it really. I mean, again, if there was a proof plan that worked, it would be easier. It would be a much easier discussion, or a proof plan that didn't.
Waiver free.
Yeah, that had a waiverless or didn't have a really significant waiver as part of it. So, and I agree that this is probably the lesser of several evils.
It's just not.
But it's setting so many precedents for us that I don't know if I'm comfortable with really any of them, unfortunately. So.
I echo that.
And I mean, you look at this lot from a lot of different perspectives. I mean, another one is to add the sort of the 3-lot plan is kind of intriguing, but if you think about even more pressure on a lot that's already a wetland, is already abutting significant wetlands, to add, the infiltration of septic systems to that ecosystem just seems, it's a broader issue, but it's an issue not to be ignored. So, again, I think it's creative and was certainly worth looking at. But again, I'm not sure the solution is really here. So I don't know if anyone else has further comment, but.
I don't know, further comment, I concur with you about the implications of such a thing. Like he says, these things are tough to subdivide. They just really weren't meant to be subdivided. Everyone would love to do it. My mother sits on big property, she'd love to subdivide. It's not designed for that, just never gonna work. And to open Pandora's box, is we'd have everybody trying to subdivide their lot, trying to make a nice payday. And one of our jobs is to protect the town from such a thing. Like I said, like Trevor says, you guys have gotten very creative. You almost got.
In 2 weeks.
Absolutely,
And this
absolutely.
is like the 9th rendition of some of which has been
I
tweaked.
fully understand, I sympathize with you, but we didn't get there. Okay, that's all I had to say.
So even in the event that I was to, the housing trust, which has the little house next door, which is, part of the town, if there was a donation made of that house, and that house can be situated on that lot, so you have, a couple of you know, dwellings or structures that can house, you know, people that utilize that.
I just don't see how that would change your numbers, your measurements. That's the
Well,
problem.
you know, Steve was very concerned about the house being renovated and torn down. If anyone's ever, I don't know, have any of you ever done that? Renovated an old 1830s farmhouse?
No.
You know, tearing it apart and then finding out the structural elements, you know, it's very expensive, and it's time, I've done it several times. Out of the characteristic of the different towns that I've worked with, as well as the city. But, you know, that old house is gonna come down whether I do one house or, you know, and I'm just looking, you know, come on. Everything's a negotiation, so I'm offering to do that. If I had another piece of land close by and not have to, you know, cut wires down, have N-Star out in the street and trailer that thing 20 miles, you know, I'd do it, but I don't have it. Now, the town owns that piece of property directly next door, whereby some of that home, and I have the floor plan, is relatively new. There was something done in the 80s. I went up to the building department. Thank you, John. And I went up to the building department. They didn't have any records past the point where I pulled a permit 2 years ago to demo the barn. They had nothing on it. So I don't think, you know, George Washington slept there. I may be incorrect. But, you know, everybody wants to preserve these things. Everyone's crying out for affordable housing. And I'm saying to the board, and maybe you're not the correct entity to approach on this, maybe I should send a letter to the Housing Trust, have a walkthrough, and just, you know, see if they have an interest.
I think we have a comment potentially from the Housing Trust.
Okay.
Dave Atkins, speaking as treasurer for WAHA, which is the Westwood Affordable Housing Associates. So there are a couple of things, a couple of facts that are there. One is that property is deed restricted so that it can only be used for affordable housing, and it can only be a single-family home on that property. So I think that would preclude, you know, because if we can't, for example, put up a duplex or anything, so I think there'd be problems with moving another house onto the lot. So that's just, I think that's the main thing that. Yeah, I mean, I think we're always looking for ways to create more affordable housing in town, and the biggest challenge I think has been that there's just not a lot of land available, and we've had a lot of properties like this one were donated along with significant deed restrictions to you know, prevent it can't turn into a big, you know, project or anything like that. So
It seems like that's a conversation for a different committee.
Yeah. Well, I'm just putting it before the, you know, so you're
No, I
aware.
hear
So
you.
you're aware, because I don't
No,
know
I hear
if
you,
you
but
know,
I-
I live
I-
next
no,
door.
I think
and
that's a
don't know
really
if you
good-
knew that I've spoken to the gentleman that owns the roadway. So if he gives me the right and we work out something, I can still cut a street off, or whether it's one house or whatever.
Yeah, but I would definitely continue the conversation with that board. I think that'd be great.
You know, it was something that we really didn't think of, John or I, and, you know, until 2 weeks ago, when he said, you know, I think they might be interested if you, know, like, I'd be willing to do that, because I've done it before. It's just costly and timely, you know? But if you're telling me you're gonna just turn it down, flat out, because it's deep, you know.
I think the other thing is it's not owned by the town. I just
Right.
wanted to clarify.
I get it.
Okay. Well, I think we probably need to move our
Yep.
meeting on.
Okay, understood.
I
Thank
don't
you
know
for
if-
your time.
Yeah, thank you for your efforts.
Very creative.
All right, our next item on the agenda is 215 High Street, a pre-application meeting, informal discussion to review concept proposal for open space residential development, AKA OSRD.
Good evening, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak in front of you tonight. My name's Michael Yanoff. I live at 21 Long Meadow Drive in Westwood. And we're going to present tonight a conceptual plan for an age-restricted community at 215 High Street. Before we present that, I just want to give you a little background on how this whole thing took place. I've been a resident for almost 20 years in Westwood. My wife and I moved into a large house in Stevens Farm 20 years ago. It was just me, her, and my son. It was empty. We quickly filled it up with more children, and 20 years later, suddenly it's emptying again. And we sat down and said, well, what are we going to do? Neither one of us wanted to move to Boston. We both loved the community. We've been very active in it, both in the school system. I was president of the association for 13 years. We wanted to stay here. And we got spoiled because we lived in a great little community in Stevens Farm, and we didn't, I could go out and buy another smaller house, but we didn't want to do that. So I took it upon myself to try to find a way to maintain that community feel wherever, my next place I go. And I started to talk to other residents in Westwood, friends, neighbors, and I was amazed at how much support there was for this and how many people actually wanted to do the same thing as me. So shortly after that, I said, well, the first thing is let's find land. And I think as evidence tonight, finding property for that in Westwood is very difficult to do. But around the same time, the Flanagans had just finished a 2-year ordeal, I guess, with another developer that wanted to do a much larger project on that property. And I was introduced to them and started to tell them about my concept. And they said, that sounds great to us, but you're going to need to get the neighbors on board. And I said, I understand that, and I know a lot of the neighbors, so met with them. And not only did they like the concept, probably compared to what they saw before, they were relieved. Some of them even want to live there. So I did the land, I did the neighbors, and then I started sitting down with Abby and trying to better understand how the process worked, and because I really want this to be a partnership between us and the town and us and the neighbors to develop something that we can all be proud of, because I'm not doing this to make money, I'm doing this to live there, and the other people involved with me are doing it to live there as well. One of the big turning points for me personally, because I'm not a residential developer, was when I had lunch with a friend of mine who was just winding up a similar development on a much larger scale in Weston called Highland Meadows. And I told him about it, and he said, come on out and take a look. And I went to this development in Weston, and I just saw the vision. That's what I wanted in Westwood on a much smaller scale. And I asked him, I said, Lee, would you be interested in helping me with this? He said, not only would I be interested in helping you, I'd like to live there as well, because he's in the same situation. So clearly there's a need for age-restricted housing, empty nester housing is what I like to call it. And we're trying to fulfill that need with a new community that we can all be proud of and live in ourselves. So with that, I want to introduce Mark Romanowski, Romanowitz. I told you I was going to get it wrong. Mark, who has done a lot of these, has an enormous amount of experience. And he's going to kind of walk you through what our vision and then our hope tonight really is just to get as much feedback as possible from the board to see if we're going in the right direction, before we go any further.
Hello, Mark Romanowitz. I'm part of the Highland Meadows development team. It really was Lee Barbieri's vision, and he put together a team to build it. So we want to do an age-restricted OSRD, 15 homes. You can go to the next slide, please, Abby, that'd be great. So that's Highland Meadows. We won't spend a lot of time on it, but it's 69 homes, and it has 10% in their bylaw, 10% affordable requirement, and they're blended into the homes that are there, mostly in duplexes and a historic home on Route 20 at the top of the page. So that's Highland Meadows. We just finished the last home and conveyed it. So go to the next slide. So there's an aerial of some of the homes. We want to do the same kind of housing. It's all master on the first floor, Really, the main living area is only in the first floor. Second floor is made up of guest bedrooms, loft kind of space, but it's mainly all one-story living. Some more of the homes that are built there, they're all individually styled. It's really a traditional architecture, a blend of different trim details, colors that really fit within a neighborhood. Historically, you'd see empty nester neighborhoods that were all beige or all white. There wasn't much thought to putting in, making it look like part of the town. This really fits in Weston, and I think it fits in Westwood as well. The architecture is very similar. The next one would be great. So more of the home styles, very mature landscaping so that when people move in, it feels like it's been there forever. And that makes a big difference for value and the people moving in. We did a early, you can go to the next one, an early site walk in the frame stage when the homes were built, and people walked through and looked out the window and could see their neighbor 25 feet away and said, this doesn't work. So we had an opening when the home was completed and landscaped, and some of those same people that said, I can't live there, ended up buying a home from us there. So interior details are important. The traditional living with the dining room, living room left and right as you walk in the front door. And all of the main living areas are at the rear of the home, really looking to open space or protected land or something like that. So street is 22-foot wide streets. LID design on all the infrastructure. So there's some of the customizations that we've done, the standard details and the customization. So you look at that center hallway, that's all standard detailing. Then the stairway going up, we would do customization for homeowners. And it's quite a selection process going through it. More details, home office, floor plans. So it's a big floor plate on the first floor because it is first floor master, big living room left and right of the front entry. The rear is family room, kitchen, breakfast area. That's really the main living area. The room to the left on that left-hand side is the master bedroom. It's really a master suite. So they're, a good-sized floor plate. Again, that's a one-story home, and that was very popular as well. So it really is, we call it a single-level series, is that one as well. But it's really a ranch that lives and looks like a home. So this is our calculation we did. We're a little shy on the existing parcel that is of the 400,000 square feet that's required. So we are pretty sure we've got land that we can make up the extra 25,000 plus or minus square feet to get to that 400,000 square foot number. I think we're still there, Michael, that we have people that we talk with. And, so I went through the calculation. All this is partially information from the prior developer that he went through for his wetlands areas. It would have to be fine-tuned when we get to a civil engineer on board. But you take the area minus the wetlands, minus any grade that's over 15%, minus any outcrops. The net usable land is 335,000 square feet. And the zoning is 80,000, so we get to 4.19. So we're down to 4 lots. There's a bonus of 1, so we're up to 5. And then if we go to the age restricted, we times 3 at 15 plus the 5 is a possibility of 20 homes on the site. And the next slide. So that's the community. High Street is on the right-hand side of the page. You would drive in. That's a 500-foot cul-de-sac length to the tip. The first building on the left is it's a townhouse that's really called a quad. It's divided into quarters. In the center section of that townhouse, in fact, I can point it out, is where the garages are. So it doesn't work on there. So the center section of that is the garages. So it's not your typical townhouse. When you drive into a community, all you see is garage doors. Here, the garage doors are hidden. And with the mature landscaping, it's going to be very difficult to see those garage doors. So there's 4 homes there. Possibly 2 of them would be the affordable component that we'd have. Or we have to work through that, or whether it be on-site or off-site, we have to really work through that with the board. The next homes are the single-family homes, similar design and size that we built at Highland Meadows. And in order to meet the 500-foot length, we put in shared driveways. We it would be preferable to have one main roadway that went the full length of the entire development. And that is something we have to look at, so. I think that's everything. Is there one more slide there that, no, I guess that's really it. No, so back, it's good to stay on this slide. So the living space is to the rear of the home. That's really the common area for the home. The front space is more traditional, and that's what the streetscape looks like. They're very small front elevations. They're not your typical big box that you've seen developed. So they really are understated in their front streetscape. Questions, comments?
What's your price point?
Actually, sir, if you don't mind, usually the board and the and staff speaks before the public. Thank you. I had the same question, but
We haven't really fine-tuned that, but I'm guessing at this point that we're probably in the 900 to $1.2 million, depending on what size home it is and the location.
I think we're early for all that. The reality
I think
is
you are,
getting
yeah.
An understanding of, is this of even of interest at some level?
So the first thing I notice is where you have 3 shared driveways.
Yes.
And obviously, if we went ahead, we'd want to combine them and reduce that and work out how we can do that in a better way.
So there's a couple issues. This open space residential bylaw also refers to the subdivision rules and regs, where it has that 500-foot distance as a maximum. So is this a plan?
So this is an alternative to that plan that would have probably an 800-foot long or so, 700, I haven't measured it, but a long drive that brings everybody access to the front of their home. So that would be the plan that could work and not have a waiver. We've met the waiver, we bypassed the waiver by getting additional land on the 400,000 square foot requirement, and then this would be an alternative for access. So I'll show the audience as well.
We thought that was much better in reality, but we wanted to fit within the requirement that you had in the bylaw.
so that's a 500-foot cul-de-sac, and this is 700, something like
yeah,
that. Yeah.
something like that, yep. We found that 20 to 22-foot rows work well, and I've been building empty nester housing all my life, and it works well in those communities, and it worked well at Weston as well.
So you measure, you don't count the near High Street where it loops in and out because that's not considered part of the dead end, I take it?
No, I counted right from High Street.
Right from High
Yeah,
Street?
I did. That was just a really a nice entrance for the community. And it's quite a big buffer. It's probably 150-foot buffer from High Street, so I could see that there's a slight grade going up. Probably a small area of grass, some landscaping, and then some real mature landscape buffer at that quad building so that we protect the street from the view and we protect the homes to the street. It probably would be mounded up slightly as well. Probably the perimeter of the site would have a lot of evergreens and some small, gentle mounding. So the site has some undulations already. I'm expecting that there's ledge in the site as well, based on the borings that I had seen from the previous developer. We are thinking it's all going to be connected to sewer and water. It's all accessible. There's no restrictions at this point, a moratorium or anything else that exists today for sewer connections. Again, an LID site design, so that works well with this kind of land plan.
And this is just the Harlequin Stables property, right? There's no other, no
There's
other
a small
takings?
parcel to make up the 25 that we
Okay, that's what I was
need
getting.
to secure.
That's what I was leading you towards, so, okay.
Yep.
So the last time we had this development, the 500-foot was a big problem, and under the senior residential development. So under the OSRD, it still exists exactly the same way, or is there any difference?
No, it still exists because it refers to your subdivision rules and regs. So as we just discussed with the last application, typically the planning board doesn't grant waivers unless you can prove you can do it without waivers. And I think this is a little bit of a stretch. The driveways, off of driveways, I don't think the planning board would typically accept. Usually there could be individual driveways off, but not driveways extending down with driveways coming off them, because that's essentially overreach of that 500
Is
foot distance.
The shared driveway bylaw does allow that, though, doesn't it? That you could have shared driveways?
You do have shared driveways by special permit.
And usually it's where each house had a driveway to a street by itself.
I see.
And the purpose of the shared driveway was to eliminate
Curb cuts.
curb cuts going onto the main street, reduce them. So you're not really achieving that here. So I think we had a lot of discussions about emergency access road coming down one side, was one way around that. It occurred to me that that at the end there is a property on the other side where there are driveways. I don't know if they're always, but you couldn't get through to if those people were cooperative.
There's a paper subdivision on the top of the page, just above the entrance road. It's only 100 feet into the property. That it doesn't go over it much further. There's a small separation of property, so it doesn't sit adjacent directly to this parcel, so that does make it tough.
But what we've done is, if you can put in something that's not usable, but it has emergency access, and then the question comes up whether the gate's there or not to keep people from using it. But if there is some emergency access available, then we waive that, because effectively you do have two ways in and out.
We actually
Right.
did that in the other development, where we use a grass pave, and there's the ability for the fire department to actually get a secondary access. The question is on a lot like this, whether or not there'll be enough room. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, you need to use it for the TV. Sorry. Would you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, my name is Lee Barbieri from Highland Real Estate Development. Basically, what I was saying is that we've done that before, where we've used a grass pave as a secondary access or egress. I think on this lot, it would be very tight in order to be able to do that, but it's something we could certainly look at.
Does that access need to be, get to us so that we still remain, it might hit you somewhere, so the maximum dead end is still 500 feet? So for instance, if it came halfway in between and hit in the middle, then then we end up with a 500-foot maximum road length that is standalone, we'll call it, without access.
Yeah, usually it's done off the ends of the cul-de-sacs.
Right.
So we haven't seen that, but I think that might be workable.
There's a little bit of a grade problem at this end, but maybe it could come in, and if it's just a temporary gravel access road, it had to be drivable for fire equipment, and we'll have to go through that process, but that may be an alternative, if there's no access from the neighbor on the northerly side.
Now, this is, sorry, Mr. Chairman, this is also part of the open space residential development portion of the bylaw. There's a requirement for there to be 50% of the land has to be dedicated to open space. And it has to be, when I was looking more through the bylaw, this is the first one. We haven't had any recently, and not since we've combined it with the age-restricted portion of the development. It has to be contiguous. So the open space needs to be contiguous, 50%, and no less than 50 feet in width. So it's not intended to include the 30-foot buffer around the perimeter. So I don't think what you've shown has that 50% also.
So you have to have the 30 feet plus 50%,
Yeah.
okay?
And it can't all be wetlands either. I think it says no more than 75% to be
Yeah,
some
we were
wetlands. So I
very
know there's
small.
wetlands in the
It's
back.
for a very small
Okay.
wetland. And
So if you had 50 feet along the edge, that would not count because the 30 feet is independent of the 50?
No, I don't think so. I mean, it might have to be determined by the planning board, but it's intended to be contiguous open space. Like, we've had one other recently, and it was its own separate parcel. It was kind of separated as an open space parcel that was not buildable.
Right. Was that the?
The one on Far Reach Road.
Far Reach Road, yeah.
the bylaw mentioned that it's also some of the open space can be covered with utilities or roadway,
Yeah, I think
but
that's
no open
portion.
drainage. So we do have the center section that is, we feel it's gonna be a pretty nice focal point that'll be landscaped and mature planting, so we'll have to really look at that closely and figure out 30 feet, 50 feet, how we can make it continuous and get the 50% open space. I would guess that we'd need to try to capture some of the center space, and there's a percentage requirement of how much of that can be roadway. I think it's outlined in the bylaw.
I think, let's see, not more than 5% of the open space areas may be covered by pavement or paved roads.
Do you know how much is there, roughly?
I thought we'd be close, no, I didn't deduct the 30 feet, but without, if I count the 30 feet, well, some of this is 50 to 60 feet over here, it's 50 feet right in this zone. 50, I thought we were close to the 50%, but I have to look at this 30-foot requirement. If we have to separate the 30 feet from that, well, that'll make a difference.
Yeah.
Does the concept look acceptable to the board?
The concept, yes.
I mean, yeah, I guess, I mean, just to speak to what, I'm sorry, I forget your name, Mr. Michael. How you opened your conversation was, I mean, certainly you are looking at real needs and real desires of the town. I mean, we have these types of discussions in every single development discussion we have, so it's good to have you in here at the front end of your work, so we can have an active discussion rather than somebody coming in with a fully fleshed out idea that that hasn't seen the light of day.
We don't
Yeah.
want to do something that, I don't want to get into this and have a battle with neighbors and a
Right.
battle with the board. I want it to be something that we all can be proud of.
Yep. And I would say, as you've heard some of the discussions tonight, obviously, to the point that we can, whittle down the waivers and understand the restrictions, particularly the open space restriction, and as soon as possible in the next couple of discussions, that would obviously be great. But it looks like a thoughtful plan, and obviously the precedent in Weston is very well thought out and seems, contextual where there is no context, right? I mean, sure, you're sort of making the context and making the houses too, so it is encouraging to see that as part of the plan. So.
Good work.
Thank you.
So in the past, there was, again, when some of the problems were beyond trying to get over the density and the roadways in and out, the oversize and of it, then there was, the viewpoints from the neighbors was important. But then there was just a lot of opposition from some of the neighbors, and they weren't the immediate butters.
No. And those were the ones that we've met with, the ones that have been back, and they supported, all that I've spoken to support.
Yeah.
And I'm having a meeting with another one tomorrow morning that has already supported the one to show them the new concept.
And for some reason, there was opposition from the development across the street, and, which I could never understand.
I think it was competition for them. I think is my guess.
I mean, it didn't make a whole lot of sense, but it was pretty strong and vocal.
Would it be possible to get a moment of your time to look at the floor plans? Because I know that was a big deal as well, as far as what would be acceptable. We modified the plans that we've used at Highland Meadows to the two-bedroom requirement. And I think there was a question about, well, if it looks like a room could be something more than a room. So we went away and we tried to modify the plans that we had. I'd love to get your input as to whether or not you think what's here is something that could be supportable, or it's, you look at it and say, it really doesn't fit what we're interested in from a bylaw perspective. What we found in Weston, in particular, is that the reality is there was a lot of concern about lots of kids moving in. Never happened. Mark can speak it to his own examples of, I don't know how many homes, but
Are we talking with, the addition of bedrooms, things like that? I think that's more of a question for the building commissioner.
Well, no, because
The bylaw.
the bylaw specifically tries to say that, they're going to be seniors living there, and you don't want younger people, whether they're younger children or grandchildren or whatever, that would make it family residential rather than senior residential. And so that's where we had the question has come up recently with the Musto properties about, is this going to be a bedroom, or is this just a spare storage room kind of thing? So it is a big question.
So
I stand corrected?
I worked with the Green Company for 25 years in the planning and design piece of their empty nester homes, and in the beginning, there was no age restrictions at all. And we built 1,000+ homes, and out of those 1,000 homes, 19 children lived in non-age restricted communities because they're first floor masters. They're tight proximities to each other. It's not places for families. The same thing happened at Pine Hills. I worked on the first 500 homes there. And those homes are not age restricted, and they have 42 children out of 1,500 homes, apartments and homes at the Pine Hills. So here's a 2-bedroom home, master bedroom, guest bedroom, and this is a media area. So, that's part of the area. This is a dining room. It's very clearly a dining room, cased opening that goes through. If you go to the previous screen for me, Abby, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you. This home,
Oh.
so this is another single-level home, a ranch, really. Master bedroom and guest bedroom. Living room in the front here. That is clearly cased opening. That one is pretty straightforward. It's a lot of space. But that's what people want. They want, they're downsizing to this 2,200 square foot home. That's what happens when, with it. One of the other plans for a minute. This is the most popular plan we have. It's called the K-style home. So living room, dining room, pretty obviously they're living and dining. Master bedroom, 1 bedroom upstairs and a loft on the 2nd floor. Media room here with a cased opening. So some of these were home offices, and that's in the bylaw calls out that home offices are not supposed to be used. But we built many of the homes with 2 home offices, one for the husband, one for the wife, because so it happens. People like those spaces, a little place to get away, get on the computer, and we're all getting much more literate on computers and social media, and even our older buyers are using it at Weston. So that's the floor plan concern that Lee raised, and I know it's difficult until you see it and you live it, but that's the question about the floor plan. Is there more work we should do on that piece of it next time?
And maybe maybe the planning board has overthought this and worried too much about it, but there's been a lot of discussion on this. About somebody can move in, and once they moved in, they start, of course, they have to get building permits to do it, technically, but there's always a concern, well, they'll just do something and make it into a real, rather than a senior residential, into a family dwelling.
What we do see is that the reason people buy here is because there are no kids. And it's almost self-policing where, you know, if someone's there, no one minds a college student, the youngest in the family, coming back for, you know, a month or two in the summertime. That's not the problem. And it's the ones that if you have someone move in, and that just doesn't happen.
But the zoning is very clear. It's a strict limit on 2 bedrooms for the age-restricted housing in the section of the bylaw. It's special permit, and it says there shall be not more than 2 bedrooms in any age-restricted dwelling, nor shall there be any den, office, bonus room, loft, attic, or similar area which could be converted for use as a 3rd bedroom. And this is in the bylaw. It was in place because that's what it took to get this approved.
To get the,
If you remember, this has been in place for a while, but it's gone to town meeting a couple times. You know, one of the times when you tried to make changes, it was not approved, and it was improved in this form with a strict 2-bedroom limit.
that's restrictive.
Yeah, and you don't have the ability to waive it.
Makes it very
Yeah.
tough for anybody to want to build, because, you know, people want to buy, you know, that they're at their place when they want a comfortable place to live and be able to enjoy their home. And
I mean, I agree. It's, people like extra rooms.
Right.
But we have that conflict there, and so far it hasn't been well resolved.
How do they define could be converted? So if it's an office, I'm sorry. How do they define
Yeah.
could it be converted? So if it's an office, but it's, you know, it's got a cased opening, it's not there's clearly no bathroom in it, there's things like that, is that considered could be converted, or?
Right, and
I
closet
believe the
space, things like
threshold
that.
is a closet, which determines from an office to a bedroom.
Right.
That's a certain amount of window area, but obviously you'd hit that for an office no matter what, but yeah. So I mean, to devil's advocate, to look at this plan, there's all sorts of different ways you could contort it and make it into multiple bedrooms, so I mean.
Exactly.
Right.
It's sort of.
It's self, it's not,
And again,
it's not defending anything.
No, exactly.
And again, that's why we're here.
Yeah.
You know, we don't want to go all the way down the path and then suddenly go, well, you know, that could be converted. And
Right.
suddenly the homes that this is their most popular design. It's beautiful. And it's
Does
very
that one have a loft in it?
yes.
Yes, to the right.
Yeah.
the upstairs, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a very good floor plan. I mean, I think it's interesting.
Perfect.
I mean, the whole thing is very impressive, so it'd be nice to upsize too. When I'm 55 and have 3 teenagers. So I kind of go back to the only thing about it, I'm just like, is the open space issue. Like I say, it's a beautiful development there, and the pictures they're very different from what I think before I was on this board, but I saw all those previous ideas for here. And I believe
Much
that,
bigger projects.
yeah, this is a very attractive thing, and but where's the open space is kind of the thing. I'm like, there's some little space in the back here.
There's the
but-
OS
Yeah.
and the OSRD.
It adds up.
Well, it's a conceptual plan, so we got some comments, so we can really get back to the drawing boards and figure out where we can get open space and access, maybe an emergency road that hits that 500-foot, gets us to that 500-foot minimum.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and we've seen this with a lot of other developments that we worked on in the past couple of years, where, before you have a room full of people, to have as few, hangnail kind of issues in terms of waivers, in terms of oddities. I mean, it gets the discussion right to the meat of the matter. It's like, well, what is the value of this discussion? I think is sort of should be sort of front of mind. And I guess I just had one other question. So what is the square footage range on some of these? Is it generally 2,000 to 3,000 square feet? Is that kind of
Yeah,
the
the
gist?
townhouse is in that 2,000 square foot range.
Yeah.
The small, single levels, I'll take that.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Townhouse is in the
I'm supposed to
2,000
be
square
policing
foot
that, but I keep
range.
forgetting.
Don't worry, Janice is doing a heck of a
Yeah,
job.
you're doing a great job, Janice, thank you.
The single level is, depending on what we end up with, in that 22 to 2,400. The K-style home, that was our most popular plan, is just over 3,500 square feet of conditioned space, first floor and second floor.
Sure.
Doesn't count any garage space or anything. They're all two-car garages. There's plenty of parking in front of each of the homes. So we don't, I know that was a concern in the bylaw, and we exceed that.
So one thing I always bring up is why two-car garages? There are some people out there who are just happy to have one car and share, or now with the traffic situations changing with Uber and shared use vehicles and things like that, I think you need to think about, should they all be two-car garages?
I can, every space is filled. Not only at Highland Meadows, we're in a little different neighborhood, but at Pine Hills, everybody, and that wasn't age restricted, but the husband and wife all have their car. I finally talked my parents out of, they're 85 and 86 to get rid of the second car, and it takes a long time to give up that freedom. So everybody uses them at this point. Obviously, there are some single people that live there, but not many, and then it's one car.
Yeah, but do two people need two cars nowadays?
It's desirable. It helps our marketing, for sure.
I know what people want, and
Yeah.
but
The times are going to change very soon, so.
yeah.
This discussion will be much different in about 5 years, but.
Actually, I would agree it's going to change, but it's a millennial. It's a change that's going to be a generation. We actually looked into this for our smaller townhomes. Could we do those with one-car garages? And I can tell you that all the research of people in this demographic said, I don't want to rely on my husband or wife to find out whether or not I have a car to drive somewhere. That was the reality. In general, the people in our community in Weston are incredibly active. They're active in the community with grandchildren. And so I agree with you that those services are available and it will change, but I don't think it's in the short run. That was our own experience.
Yeah,
What
no,
about, shared use center right in the development where someone can just pick up a car and go? That kind of thing. Zip cars.
Yeah, that'd be new. I mean, I can just tell you.
That's what's happening.
Yeah,
Those
it
are
definitely.
the changes coming along.
It definitely is. I can just tell you from my perspective, I don't think age restricted is like, our parents age restricted. My wife and I are extremely active, always going in different directions. I'm not retiring anytime soon, even though I can't stand the thought of living in an age-restricted community. But, I am of that age. But that doesn't mean I'm retiring anytime soon. I still need my vehicle to get around, and she still needs hers. The day of Uber just coming and picking me up without a driver in it, it's going to be great. But again, I don't think that's coming anytime soon. And I know that if I have two cars, I don't want to go somewhere where I'm going to have to shovel one of them out. Not in this, maybe in Florida.
So I'm not saying for tonight, but it would be great to have a format to get some feedback on at least the floor plan, as well as I think you've given us some good feedback and a direction to go to work on to look at the open space and a secondary access. But that would probably be the only other thing that, I don't know if you want us to come back before you or.
How many different floor plans are you thinking?
Realistically, we think probably 3.
Okay, I suggest maybe we submit those and we can.
These are them.
Okay, all 3 are there, and we could go over the bylaw itself and try to match up as best we can.
Yeah.
Like I say, the bylaw that was just read to me sounds pretty restrictive.
And this
I
is-
don't know what
yeah.
the relief for that would be
Yeah.
at this moment.
Sure.
And the development we finally got, this has been a problem, trying to sell, given those restrictions, trying to sell those units. And I for one would rather have something more like, with more room, but still just have, the two-bedroom limit. But the way our bylaw is written, it's tough to do that and make these things desirable for people.
And that's the problem. And in the community that we built, the last community that we built, I will say that it's a home that's used, they normally have a secondary home and sometimes even a third. The reality is they don't really use more than 2 bedrooms. There are occasions where people come in, they want to have someplace to sleep. But in that development, we built 3-bedroom in general. And the reality is they don't get used. And even this plan, which is the largest of the plans, at 3,000 feet, people came to us and said, hey, we'd also like to develop the basement, because when our grandkids come over, we want to send them downstairs and and that's it. So the reality is I would foresee that as well, where people would say, hey, I'd like to have a place where I can just send my kids.
Yep. So these have basements. I guess it's kind of a silly question after you just make that statement, but.
Many. I don't know what the
Why?
percentage is, but
Why?
For that very reason. So when their grandkids come over, they have a big hangout space with a big TV and.
It's also just a New England thing. You have to have a basement.
To put somebody to keep the tubers.
or to keep junk.
And it happens not just in Weston at that price point. I'm sorry. It happens everywhere. People have a little bit extra space. A walkout basement is a great place to put sort of a general family room, place where the kids can go, or the husband or wife can have an exercise room. And that's at all price points, from $400 to, where we're selling them in Weston. So
another consideration is that we would like to, and again, we can't enforce this through the bylaw, we'd like to have something that's affordable to the general residents in the town, so that someone owns an average priced house in town would be able to sell that house and be able to afford to move in here. And that sometimes can be tough to do.
And then also, if I could expand on that, I know you mentioned the affordable units. So the bylaw does require 15% of the dwellings have to be affordable. They also have to be indistinguishable from the market rate unit, so I don't think they can be separated as you've had them shown. So I think if it's single family homes, then the single family have to also be.
We had a DHCD approved our affordable housing in Weston, and we were able to take and we put them in a duplex. So one was affordable, one was a market rate. They were substantially smaller because we only had to meet the requirements of but they were, from the outside, the architecture and the landscape was identical on the outside, but the standard on the inside was smaller and not quite as lush interior. It was approved by DHCD. It would be difficult to have, we have a mix of attached and detached. It would be much better to put them in the attached homes from that perspective. Also, we're considering the possibility of off-site. I don't know what's required for that. Is there
I think your bylaw says the preference is for them to be included on site within the development unless the planning board approves another off-site option after a discussion with the housing authority. So the preference is for it to be developed on site. I know it would need to be approved by DHCD. So I'm looking at Nora here, who might have a little more information about what those units have to look like, I think, or what the parameters are. No, sorry.
So our bylaw requires that the units be local initiative program units, and the local initiative program says that they have to be indistinguishable from the other homes. So if you're developing 12 single-family homes and 4 townhomes, and you have to have 3 affordable units, the percentage of the units would have to be distributed within the development in the same way. So 2 of the 3 would have to be single-family homes, and 1 could be a townhouse. Now, single-family homes of that size probably are not, I don't know if they would work for the affordable owners. So it may be best in this case for you to propose off-site development for affordable units. It just might make the project work better, but that would have to be approved by the planning board.
I thought that
Pass it around.
I thought the requirement was if it was 12 to 15 homes, we have 2 affordables. And then there was a chart in the bylaw.
I believe you showed 16, didn't you?
15.
Oh, I thought it was 16. Okay, so if it's 15, you'd have to have 2.
I see,
And
okay.
you'd have to have one be a single-family home and one could be a townhouse.
Okay.
But you wouldn't be able to put the both in the townhouses in that development and still meet the local initiative program guidelines. Because your percentage of townhomes is such a small portion of your development. You have 4 of the 15.
And that's local.
That's the local initiative program regulations.
I see.
Yeah,
Because we
that-
did the same thing at the other
Mhm.
place. We had a
And
very
they were able
small
to do
number of townhomes that were side by side.
Mhm.
And totally indistinguishable, but they were all in that area.
I don't think that meets the guidelines that we have,
Right.
so.
And don't we also say that they should be mixed in throughout the development, not congregated all in
Yeah,
one
not
area?
next
Isolated
to
in one
each other,
spot.
so that you have one building that has what you're calling your quad, you don't put both of them in that one building.
Yeah. Yeah, so we would have to look at that. And what I was going to say is that we found it tremendously difficult to fill the affordable over 55 in Weston. Nobody qualified. And those that did qualify gave all their assets to their kids and were kind of financially no different. So we ended up, one of the things we proposed to the town was to do family affordable, which we did at the edge of the site in an old, essentially we built what looks like a barn next to the old farmhouse. And those sold instantly. And so, at least in that situation, there was a much greater need for family affordable than there was for over 55.
Yeah, I mean, that is the big problem with a lot of affordable, is that it's the affordable that's to the 80 percentile of the area median income. So it's a very narrow band of people who can actually afford it. And if you're looking at homes that are this size, it'd be very hard to find someone who's both, who has a low enough income to fit into the program, but yet makes enough money to afford the affordable rate. So yeah, there definitely have been been things where we would say, instead of the affordable housing here, to do something else creative. But kind of one of the things in the past that was confusing is that was interpreted as, well, we could, put $3,000 towards something, and it was like the same cost of building the affordable here. So if it's going to cost you like $500,000 to build an affordable unit, it would mean contributing $500,000 towards the building of something somewhere else.
Right.
Yeah, we actually built also an off-site affordable at the last. So we did on-site, we did family affordable, and we did an off-site unit at the last development.
So we could, building it would be easy piece. The town sometimes has the land.
Is that what happened with the last one? The church, yeah, the town actually had the land, we built the affordable.
Got it. Okay. We should probably move on. I want to ask, was there anyone from the public who had questions or comments at this point in time? Okay. Excellent idea. Put that in the record. I don't know, I mean, is this something we would do some kind of a subcommittee to talk about further, or not at this point? Maybe we wait for another iteration?
Well,
I don't know.
in
I'm
the
just asking.
bylaw now, before, you could always have pre-application meetings, but if the applicant wants to move forward, the next step is for them to come to the land use committee, which is a staff, really the various staff, your staff that reviews your applications. So staff would give their feedback initially and write a recommendation to the applicant that you would take to the planning board for the planning board's preliminary review. And so the next stage to the planning board is a preliminary submission that you would essentially vote on to get to the special permit stage.
Yeah, okay.
So it's kind of a 3-step process.
All right. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right. Next item is the 300 Washington Street, Assessors Map 23, Lot 215. An A&R plan to create 2 lots to separate the fire station parcel from Morrison Park. Goes empty.
All right. Okay. Now, this application is from the town. As we were closing out the fire station project, we realized, probably should have done it at the time of the special permit, but realized it made more sense for the fire station parcel. Right, how it is now is all one parcel with the fields and the fire station. So we had a surveyor prepare this plan to separate the fire station on its own parcel. So Washington Street, East Street, they both have the minimum 40 feet of frontage and lot area.
So these lot lines we always saw, but they just were never put into effect?
No, this this is really the new lot line creating.
Right, but does it go right along the wall? And
Yeah, we tried to follow the retaining wall. It's kind of what you would think.
so
it
it kind of
would be
looked
in
like
here.
it
It
was
looks-
there as a lot, but
Yeah.
physically it looked like it, but on the plan it wasn't actually there, so now we're putting it there.
Yes.
Okay.
We need to make a motion on this.
Yep.
Make a motion to approve the A&R 300 Washington Street to separate the town fire station from Morrison Park.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
No.
Hearing none. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right, so
Five
I'll
ayes.
just- we have the 2 paper copies here. Oh, is this John's? Is that John's? And then this one needs the Sharpies, yep.
How do you think we can go about correcting that language in the senior housing? That is uber restrictive.
Yeah, I don't know, it is, there's a lot of things about that that are complicated, like, 55 years old is very
That's antiquated.
disturbing.
Well,
Oh,
it's
yeah.
antiquated, it should be,
But-
I can see moving it up to 60.
Stuff
Yeah,
like that.
but it's
The
not
only-
even that, it's just
The only
basically
time both cars are
what
out
we can build so
is one of the times when,
it's
is
not
usually
worth
when my
building.
car is sitting in the
So
Route
hence you
128
don't get
parking
it.
garage when I'm in Boston. So we
Yeah, well, that's
probably could get along with one car.
That's been the problem, it seems like, and, this
As
thing
long
is,
as one person drives the other.
Looks beautiful.
But it's open space. I think of an open space thing would be like a big
Oh, I
field.
think
with,
it's
you know,
nice to
Right,
keep other
well,
cars off.
again, it all comes down to
Hidden away,
your
you know?
arithmetic.
Oh, no doubt, it's.
I would like to see in that something more of a center
Keep asking that question.
of the project kind of open
Ask them the
space
car
as
question.
opposed
Oh,
to spreading
they need to
around
do
the
more
edges,
research.
you
I've been
know?
asking it for years.
Push that outside, making a center.
Yeah. My house was built in 1979.
You have a
79.
beautiful house.
Oh, thank you.
Yours is just two, right? It's a big garage though.
Yeah, it's big. It's for a house that was built in the 70s. It's a really big garage.
Yeah.
Which I wouldn't change for anything, but yeah, I don't know. guys should do some more research on where this stuff is going.
So when I built my house, and I put a storage room built
All right, what's
in
left?
so that it's not the complete garage, so the car, so one regular sized car and one compact car will fit in there. Cannot have, the person who buys my house cannot have two large sized cars.
The other thing is like,
Well, they can't,
I
it's
don't
really
like
built
to
in by
hear
house.
that,
Yeah, it's a, it's actual
designed
room,
this
it's
to
a
prevent
wood, it's not a bearing wall, but it's all.
you know, that's what they have, that's what this is designed for.
Yeah,
but
no, it's not
like,
just that.
You know, it's in a certain
It's a storage room.
project. You know, I
Next,
guess.
anything on the ZBA radar?
Westwood Glen, you know, they were never designed for children. You know, they never had to say that.
I had drafted some comments yesterday and put them in your packet. I think, what were they? Oh, there was an application on, what was it? Pond Plain was, they had submitted an application, for a second story, addition, was that it? Nope, no, sorry, that wasn't it. That was, that was the one on Loring Street, and I just commented that the second floor has to be under the 25 feet when it's in the, within the minimum yard setback. And then Pond Plain, there was a special permit request. Oh, I know what it was, and it had come under that section of the bylaw that you had changed in the spring about not being more than 4 feet closer to the front yard setback. And I think on the architectural plans, it showed it only being 4 feet into the front setback, but on the plot plan, it said 6 feet. So I pointed out that only the 4 feet is allowed at a special permit, so either the plan should be revised or it would need a variance request.
Now, is that saying the porch needs to be 11.7 by 4, or is it just that it's, they just have to, because it kind of would be, what's the point if you know?
It was the 6 feet wide into the, so it wasn't the length
So
of
it's
the
coming
porch. It
6
was,
feet off the front?
yes, yeah,
And-
from where it is today. So they're allowed to go 4 feet closer for porches, but
Right.
not,
Right.
so they need to pull it back 2 feet.
That's gonna change the whole look.
Yeah, that's kind of, I mean.
Well,
it'd be
but
like-
that,
Yeah.
you know,
This table's probably 5 feet across.
no, 4. I'd say 4.
I'd say 4 too.
It's only one piece of laminate, so it's probably 4. I guess now it's
Oh,
turning
that's
the
one
it's turning the
way
other
to do
way.
And then there was an application on High Street for an accessory apartment. It was a special permit, and then it looked like a variance was submitted, but it wasn't clear what the relief was, so I commented that it needs to meet, the zoning board needs to review to make sure it meets the dimensional requirements in the accessory apartment bylaw. If not, then it should be redesigned, or they would need to seek specific relief in the form of a variance. So that relief from the zoning board would need to be clear on what they're granting. And then there's very specific criteria of what they would need, findings they need to make to grant the variance. It wasn't clear, it just said no, hardship NA, it wasn't clear in the application what the hardship was, so that was my comments.
That's 1464.
Yes. I think, and I think when I talked to the zoning agent, I think it was that they weren't sure if a variance, if any relief was needed at this time. I think there was a discrepancy on what our record showed for the size, so they were still verifying that. So I think they may have applied, for a variance in case they need it, but it hasn't been determined yet if they need a variance.
The project itself.
Yes, because it's a certain percentage of the entire house, and it wasn't clear on what that was yet. So I think they submitted the application as special permit and variance. So that needs to be worked out before the hearing.
I just thought that was a commercial building, but I guess it's not.
No.
Okay.
And then if you want to move on to the 1000 Washington Street project. So that in Dedham, we sent, I don't know if you saw the letter that I had sent. They did receive it. The planning board members got it, and it was provided to the applicant. The hearing was opened and then continued to their December 14th meeting. I think they continued it largely so that, or mostly so the applicant could continue to go to their design review. In Dedham, they have a design review that reviews the design of the building committee rather than the planning board. So they were going through that process during this time.
Is there any opposition to it that you know of?
No, there wasn't. I heard.
It's on the side of the highway.
No, there wasn't. Yeah. Nora did attend the hearing, and there was, I think, one of the abutters attended, asked some questions, but there was not opposition.
Okay.
So we did get the updated traffic report. I've sent that to Public Works and to Beta for them to review to tell us if there's any impact. So Beta's looking at that to see if
Definitely going
the
to
traffic.
impact
Yes.
traffic there, absolutely. You're going from
but-
nothing. Yeah, you're going to impact it 100%.
But
You
they'll
would
look
think
at.
that, and then you look at the report, and it's like,
There's never any impact on these reports.
It's added to every other car on the road. It's,
Well, and Beta can make, and we asked them to look at the traffic signal timing, and we might need to, especially because there'll be
Coming
cars
this
coming
way.
from
going
Gay Street
towards-
Extension, essentially, where no cars have been coming from before. So we've asked them to look at if we need to make signal timing changes to that signal. And then we've also asked for the crosswalks.
Yeah, because there's
to
no
be added.
crosswalk there, so.
Well, there's
Yeah.
a crosswalk in front of Hogan Tire.
Hogan going across
Going-
to Washington.
Going across Washington Street. There's
Yep.
not, well, there is
there's Gay Street, and
there's Gay
Yeah,
Street.
there's
Is
two.
that an actual crosswalk or just an implied one?
yeah, no, it has a
There's
light.
two.
Okay.
Yeah. There's two on two sides, yeah, and then Gay Street across to the Dedham side. But so I will provide an update asking, again, that we want the sidewalks. Also, we forgot to add with the accessible ramps going down to those crosswalks too, since they don't exist now. So I'll add that.
Because I'd want the crosswalk buttons on either side of Washington going down into Dedham.
I'd like
Is
to
it-
see crosswalks across, Gay Street Extension.
four.
Yeah,
we
all
asked for
four.
all
Yes, we did ask for all four. Yeah, so it's two more to
That's
be
what I'd
added.
like to
yeah.
see. And, and getting back to traffic, that light backs up in the morning.
To Milk Street.
Yeah, sometimes, yeah, absolutely. And this project's not gonna help that situation,
No.
to say the least.
Well, part of the reason there's people, because if they're cutting through the School Street neighborhood, myself included, is because that light backs up so far in
Right,
the morning,
right.
so.
That's amazing.
Would be
But
helpful
that's,
if that was
that's
some
some
kind
major access route to
Yeah.
128,
Yeah,
For a lot of us, we have to go there. We have no options.
Because the impact will be like cars it'll add another dimension, like people coming
Right.
in and out of that place.
It's gonna slow that light down.
You're right.
It's
A
gonna
dimension that doesn't
slow the
exist.
outlet of cars coming off of Gay Street. So it's going to impact us.
Mhm.
How much,
Okay.
we'll see.
All right, so if I get comments from Beta, I'll send them to you in case it's before our next meeting, so we could make sure we get the comments to Dedham before the hearing.
Yep.
All right, what do we got?
Decisions from prior meetings?
No decisions.
Not much going on, so
Yep.
I feel nice we have decisions to sign. OSRPS?
Oh, yes,
Also
Open
known as
Space
the Open
Committee,
Space
yep.
Committee.
Yep, so next week is gonna be the first meeting.
It's Thursday.
Brian and Steve are the planning board representatives next Wednesday. Wednesday night, they're having their first meeting, and then they'll be getting ready for having a vision session on January 18th, which is a Thursday night. So we'll send more information about that. That will be community-wide, still looking for a location on that one. But also, there's a survey, if you have had a chance to fill it out. It's open until December 1st, Friday.
It's not binding, is it?
It just goes in your permanent record. It's nothing serious. It's until you try to apply for one of these 55 and over residential
Absolutely.
units.
If there's a meeting that I can't attend, will somebody else go from the planning board?
Well, Steve is,
Yeah, no.
either
I
you
guess
or Steve are the
Steve.
alternate.
No, that's fine, I just want
Okay.
to,
I-
Since there are two
I
of
will
us,
be there too.
because the
And-
18th of January, I won't be able to go. That's fine. Visioning.
So the one next week, is that a public meeting or is that just a?
Yep, that's a
I guess
public
all
meeting, but it's the first meeting, so there'll probably be introductions, talking about their plan as they move forward, meet the consultant that we've hired, and then really prepare for the vision session.
Okay. Who's kind of helming the process? Is Nora part of that, or is there more?
Yes, myself, Nora, and Karen Catroni, the conservation agent.
Who's gonna
by the
chair, do you
staff.
know?
Nancy.
I don't,
That's fine.
who?
I don't
Well,
know
this is
why I
the first
laughed there,
meeting,
Brian.
so.
The planning board. That's the first thing that happens when you get a planning
yeah,
board. You
yep.
get assigned to a
Someone will
committee,
get,
and you
um,
become
Chair of everything.
Someone
Remember,
will-
it's what I did to be, it was at the center task force. It was.
And then the heat's all on you.
Yeah. Just joking. Anyway, okay, great. Committee reports.
No. Well, we had a trick meeting last week. For the life of me, I can't remember what we
Last week or the week
discussed.
before, but we had one.
Thrilling.
Well, usually, yeah, they're actually very good. Legislative breakfast. We are trying to organize a legislative breakfast for February. And we're still trying to come up with the best date to get the most amount of reps and the such, and the crowd. I guess in the past, they've had a problem with getting both reps and crowds. They either get the reps and no crowds, or no crowds and no reps. You know, and it's a sticky thing, because there's a lot of planning that goes into it, and it can be blown up with, you know, one news cycle can take all the representatives away for you, and, you know, you end up with nothing, so. We're working hard on that. Right, Steve?
Right. And I think we also just had discussions on what we're doing for the coming year. Is that?
Yeah, well, yeah, we're building, just basically what we're gonna be covering over the year, so we can kind of meter it out and, you know, make every meeting as interesting as possible for everyone.
And East Street Bridge, it looks like they started cutting trees down, so
So, yeah, they've been surveying.
is that gonna be a Q2? They have dates on.
They have dates, yeah.
They've
I don't re-
started their, most of the work will be next spring and summer. So
When's
they're
the finish
hoping
date, August of 19?
they'll be substantially complete by the end of 2018. So this time next year, they'll be like substantially complete, but then it will continue to 2019.
Next winter, yeah. It'll be nice to have that finally done and off our, not so much that it's been on our plate, but
Right.
it's been needed to be done for so long. Be nice to get rid of it, have it done.
So December 7th will be, the MPO meeting will be here in Westwood at the new,
The new
Marriott-
courtyard.
Marriott Courtyard, 10 o'clock on December 7th,
10 a.m.?
10 a.m.
I thought it was earlier.
No, 10
So
to,
Am I the alternate for that, or what's the, what is the status of that?
I usually, oh, no, this is the MPO.
But the trick board,
So-
we're meeting with the MPO. Is that how it is?
No, the MPO, the Metropolitan Planning Organization for it's the Boston Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, has elected representatives, and the representative elected is from Norwood, and it's Tom O'Rourke from the Chamber.
Right.
And I am the alternate, when he's not available, and I've actually been appointed by the Norwood Selectmen to be the alternate on that.
But am I right in saying this is also a trick meeting? We're all.
No.
Yeah.
So it's strictly the MPO, whatever is on the agenda. If you've never been to an MPO meeting, here's an opportunity to go see one without having to go into Boston.
So is everyone invited to that? Is the full board invited, or
Well,
who's
the
invited?
room has a capacity of like 90, but, yeah, if you're interested, show up.
December 7th?
It's December 7th at 10 a.m.
10 a.m.
Yep.
And it goes to about 12:30, depending on the agenda. And then afterwards, we're giving them a tour, a bus tour of the Westwood developments, you know, University Station.
Yes, that's
the-
right. There's a reason I have it in my calendar.
Yeah.
Do you feel like it's because of the trip?
If you want to show up
It's
just
gotta
for the
be.
tour, I think you could probably come. So, you know, we'll make a presentation, we'll have a welcome and a presentation telling the MPO about the town and what we've been doing. Nora will be leading that, and Mike Gillette will speak, and usually it's an introduction by one of the selectmen who gives a welcome and some history of the town.
Okay.
Okay. We did have a Transportation Authority meeting, although I'm struggling to remember who's.
The Regional Transportation Advisory Council.
Yes.
Uh,
Sorry, the Advisory Council.
the
They're no longer
Advisory
regional-
Council.
They're no longer the R, it's just the
Yeah.
TAC.
And
It was. Took notes in my other notebook, otherwise I would remember better, but it was, I spoke of transportation topics.
so there is also a freight plan that's available for review if you're interested in, from the state. I haven't even had a chance to look at that. And previously there was a part of the pedestrian plan, which is a sort of a operational guidelines for cities and towns for pedestrian, and it uses in laying out streets and for pedestrians and bicycles, and it had a lot of things in there and reference other documents. It'll be all part of they'll have a bicycle plan and a pedestrian plan. This was it's for both, sort of. And so that was the draft form, so I imagine it'll be going into a more final form now with that. And right now the freight plan is they're asking people to look at that. And we did have was there some discussion on the advisory council on the freight plan?
Yeah, I think I had to leave that day before they started the freight plan thing, but I saw the first two presentations, but I was struggling to remember what they were.
And yeah, and in the past they've had discussions on it and the role of the advisory council, how to get more involved in that.
Any other topics?
What's the next step on that sidewalk fund, I guess? Do we need to do anything with that?
So this
I'll find out. I was
So
gonna
we
write
can-
something up for finance to make clear, because I think those funds should be not used or released, without planning board voting and written submission, similar how we release funds from the subdivision funds anytime.
We also have to make, basically the rules of who's
Yeah.
gonna decide
So,
what and where.
so I need to
Well,
talk
If
about that a
the
little bit
planning
more.
board approves how the money is used, then first someone would figure out how to use the money. Then the planning board would have to approve the use of that money. So we wouldn't be sitting there trying to pick out something. We'd just
Right,
be.
it's not shopping with a wish list.
Yeah.
It's
Just the approval
basically
authority.
just,
Yeah.
approving as what comes along and what we think, what we think of the project.
Yeah, so,
Yes, who evaluates crosswalks? Because I know even from walking from Hanlon over towards School Street, about a month ago, I was going to cross the street, and I was with my daughter, and as I was going across the street, a car was coming down the road, didn't see us, so then we had to back onto the sidewalk. There's nothing on that side.
which street are you on?
It's
On
on
East
Gay
Street?
Street.
On Gay Street?
Yeah, so walking from Hanlon on Gay, when you want to take a left onto
Okay.
Pine.
Yeah.
So the other day I was driving down Gay Street.
And there's no, what are you saying is wrong at that intersection?
So there is a.
I know there's a sight line
There's a
issue.
crossing guard.
Yes, and there's an actual crosswalk.
There is a crosswalk, but as a driver's coming down Gay Street, so I
Oh,
went
it's a
down
sight
Gay
line
Street.
issue.
It's a total sight line.
Absolutely, and that's
you
been-
you can't see that side.
Since the dawn of time, it's been there.
So we do have the pedestrian bike safety committee, and we do have a prioritized list of complete streets projects.
Okay.
What I would propose is to create a prioritized list of sort of smaller projects of safety improving things. Because what I'm really thinking about is that there are dangerous crossings in the town, crosswalks that are not where they could use a flashing light or something. I don't know how we would, what the best technology is, but, you know, we've talked about it on the ped bike committee. There are things you can do, blinking lights, push button activated things. There's lots of things like that that could be done at individual crossings that are not as expensive as, say, building a whole sidewalk. And I'd like to see a fund that's used to fund those kinds of things quickly. So we could say, we had a list of priority locations. You say there's, for example, there are Pine Lane across Gay Street, Dean Street across Washington, Croft Regis across Washington. There's a pond at Lake Shore. There's places that could use some kind of safety enhancement. If we had this money in a fund and we could just authorize it to be spent on things like this, I think that could be a very powerful tool to get something done in these individual locations.
All right, so we should discuss this at the Pedestrian and Bicycle Safety Committee and see what we come up with. But what was the distance of the sidewalk, the money? So the money theoretically is supposed to, if it was 1,000 feet of sidewalk and the cost of that, then we should be able to find 1,000 feet of sidewalk somewhere.
Yeah, it was
We
over
should probably
1,000.
start going down the list, looking at the lengths of
Well,
sidewalk
like
and
Dave
see
is saying,
does anything
it goes
fit.
beyond sidewalk and goes
Yeah.
into safety devices for crosswalks as well. And I have no problem with that being written in, you know, that we
Oh,
can use
yeah.
it for either or. We
So
don't have to
should
use it for a
We should look
sidewalk.
down the sidewalk list, at the same time also look at various crosswalks that we could fix up, and then
Absolutely.
decide which would, based
Sidewalk
upon
and
that, which is more
crosswalk
important.
safety, which I think should be very high on the list. I think it should be priority.
Agreed.
Yeah, I'll look into it a bit more. I just think for the one project that we had, it was specific, you know, we asked for the money for a sidewalk
you
for
know,
this
Relatively
one.
a small amount of money. We could spend it in 10
Yeah.
seconds. You know?
But we could expand the fund, like,
We could expand it, so like, let's say. that-
and as once we've created this fund, we could outline the
So the problem,
parameters more.
here's another problem, is that's so many, do you remember
It
what
was
the
like
distance
over
was?
1,100 or so.
1,100, but that's 1,100 feet of a asphalt sidewalk. The DPW really wants to start building concrete sidewalks, so that would be a
So
much
we-
shorter.
So we have to
concrete
start,
sidewalk.
now that we have to designate, it has to be 1,000 feet of concrete sidewalk,
Wow.
which is gonna be a different rate than asphalt sidewalk.
Moving ahead, we should be looking at our subdivision rules and regulations, which I have done, and I have to get back to it, and update them. And one of the things we should consider updating for our subdivision rules and regs is a requirement that there be concrete sidewalks now instead of asphalt sidewalks. And I think that would be a good change to, one of the changes to the subdivision rules and regulations.
Are we
should
still
look at.
doing asphalt sidewalks in the town? I don't think I've seen
I
any.
believe that we are not, that our DPW really only wants to do concrete sidewalks. And the reason is they last so much
Well, they're
longer.
more
and
durable
and
and-
easily,
Yeah,
you know,
and easily to be replaced.
maintained, and
Okay.
And so, coming up, Abby and I will be working on a first draft of that a revision to the subdivision rules and regulations. And beyond that, then there are other things we can probably look to modernize in our environmental review.
Right,
It
so,
occurred to me that we, like, at one point, I had to add into our environmental review, the fact that they should have bicycle parking. That didn't used to be in there when I first came on the planning board.
In bicycle parking in
For any commercial
subdivision?
commercial
Any kind of commercial got it.
development.
Okay.
So what about things like shuttle bus stops, where appropriate? And all these things would be things that we would ask them to look at where they're appropriate. They don't want to be necessarily mandates that they have to do it. It would be to incorporate it into the plans and think about how it should be incorporated. Things like shuttle bus stops, including shelters for people waiting. Then what about, we require bicycle racks. What about bike sharing, drop-off and pickup services, places for that? Locate a place where that can be located. And what were the others? And designating parking spaces for shared use vehicles like zip cars.
How about
and
charging
about
stations?
Yeah, the charging
That was
stations.
the next on my list,
It's a
is charging
slippery slope,
station.
though, because once we start putting provisions in for them, and people are gonna start demanding them, then
Well, we need
it's
to,
more difficult.
we list a lot of things that they need to take into consideration, and it's like a checklist that we can go down and say, okay, do you have this or not, and they can give us the reasons why it would or would not be appropriate. So we should
Okay.
be adding these things to the list.
Okay, no, I'm fine with that.
So that's, because that's in our zoning bylaw, that would be a town meeting change. Something to-
if we do that, yeah.
If we,
it would
yeah,
be-
if we do that.
Probably, yeah, because our EIDR is
Yeah.
clear.
Or maybe it's enough to add it into the rules and regs for, I don't know, we have to look at
Yeah,
that.
okay.
Just revise the rules and regs to include those things.
All right, so
Approval of minutes? Minutes from the 17th and the 11th, oh, sorry, 17th of October, 11/7. Does anyone have any commentary or changes to the meetings? To the minutes, sorry. Any, do I have a motion to approve?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from, what's the date?
10/17?
10/17.
11/7?
11/7.
Okay.
Second.
All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye? Okay,
thank you.
okay. You say we have nothing yet scheduled for the...
Right, so your next meeting's Monday, December 11th, but you have no application, so if you don't have anything, I could cancel the meeting, but I'd like to wait till the week before in case something comes in.
Is there any indication of anything coming out of, yes?
Something.
Not yet, hopefully. They're aiming, so we were hoping by now, but they're not ready. So they're trying, I talked to the developer yesterday, and he's gonna try to submit next week for the January 9th meeting. So December 7th is the filing deadline for January 9th. So we'll know by next week if they make it in time for the January meeting. There's a lot of work for them to do still.
I mean, that's gonna run into,
Mhm.
it's gonna run into the town meeting.
Yeah, it's,
They won't make, can't imagine they'll get on the ticket for spring.
according to my timeline, it was too late, but you have, let's say, 2 meetings in January, 2 meetings in February. The public hearings for FinCom 4 meetings start the first week in March. They usually open the first week in March, and then they continue to the 3rd week in March. So if anything that goes to town meeting should be ready to go by the first week in March.
You're all on notice.
Okay, I have a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed?
10.
Meeting's adjourned 4 to. It's only 10 o'clock. This is.
No, but it feels a lot later.